Jay Crawford, Adam the Bull, Garrett Bush, and so many big names, it would take me hours to say all of their names. The ultimate Cleveland sports show. Booyah!
Oh,
yeah.
Cutdown Day! Here we are.
Cutdown Day, and I want to, before we start on Cutdown Day, I know that we in the media love to discuss these cuts, but it's also important to note that a third of the league, essentially, today will lose their job.
Yeah.
And if you've ever had a personal connection to a player who was released or who was cut, this is their life. This is their dream coming to an end. So I just want to throw that out there to start the show. Not that I want to be a downer, but I want
downer over there.
I want to stress the point because we've all known players and we even considered these players friends.
Sure.
This
It's
is
a tough
traumatic.
day. Yes.
This is traumatic.
Fortunately,
if you've ever
they've
been handed a pink slip,
Yeah.
a third of the league today essentially is going to be asked to turn in their playbook. And for most of those players, the dream stops today. And that's tough.
Or they go to Canada.
That's real life.
Or the USFL or the XFL. Or
yeah, as I said, the dream ends today.
Yes. But fortunately, the practice squads have been expanded to 12, so more guys at least have a job.
That's absolutely right.
That's good. But you're right. There's
I do think there's a measure of sensitivity that I think we should treat this topic with, just because a lot of times we say, oh, he's a pig, get him out of here. No, he's a human being. He has a family. He has a dream, and it was squashed today. So I just throw that out there at the beginning. Not that anybody was going to be disrespectful.
Well, I might have been.
I think, and we're all aware of that.
Whenever I call a player a scrub or say he sucks, I always later in the day feel bad that I say that because he doesn't suck compared to the general public.
Sure.
But I am just who I am, and so I'm yell and scream. But
you speak in hyperbolic terms, and that's okay.
That's who I am.
That's who you are.
Obviously, nobody in the NFL, nobody even in a training camp is a scrub.
Yeah.
They're all amazing athletes and deserve respect. By the way, I hope nobody will say this is something that almost everybody in the sports media says on this day, and it drives me crazy. I want to punch everybody in the face that does this. Hopefully, none of you will say this today.
I hope so too.
Because everybody says, just because you made the 53-man roster today doesn't mean you're definitely going to be there because there's still cuts and there's still waiver cuts. We all freaking know that. We've been paying attention to football for 100 years.
Well, a lot of times,
don't be that guy.
Folks are Captain Obvious. They say things that just to reiterate a point or whatever. But
yeah.
So anyhow, there are reports. The Browns have not released their official 53-man roster. I don't expect them to until later in the day. I'm sure they're still taking phone calls from teams.
Sure.
There are some names that we thought we might see that aren't on this list. Perhaps they're trying to still work trades. They have till 4 o'clock today to submit that list.
Right. Even if a guy is reported to be cut, he's probably not officially cut.
Exactly.
But the names we've heard that you would know right now, John Kelly, Johnny Stanton, and Josh Rosen are the three names.
Those are the big ones. Stanton, I think, is the big one. I saw Mary Kay, and Mary Kay Cabot is. Let me quickly run through what's going to be on the show. Mary Kay is going to be on. She's going to talk to us about roster cuts. She's also going to talk to us about an article that she wrote yesterday where she quotes an NFL official who is very concerned about Deshaun Watson moving forward. We're going to talk to her about that. Aditi Kinkhabwala is also on the show. We've got the trifecta of women reporters in the NFL. If you think about it, Mary Kay, first class. Aditi, of course, she's ours. But here in about 7 minutes, Cynthia Freeland of the NFL Network is going to be calling in. Cynthia's in the news today because yesterday on an NFL podcast, she told a story of an encounter she had with Baker Mayfield following the Bills Panthers final preseason game. In which I'm sure you've heard it by now. McNuggets, you want to play it now or you want to hold it?
We'll take the tag board. Steve, you can punch tag board real quick.
If you haven't heard this,
so everyone understands before Cynthia.
So I'll just quickly set it up. Baker was leaving the field. Cynthia has known Baker for years. I worked with Cynthia for years at the ESPN Network, at ESPN. Now she's at the NFL Network.
Oh, she does Bill's sidelines?
Yes, she does.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
So if we can roll the clip from the podcast.
Now?
Let's play it now.
Let's take it
play
now
it
so
when she
everyone's
comes
full.
on too. But
Steve,
everybody,
let's take
if you haven't
soundbite
heard this, here it is.
You ran into Baker Mayfield, the former Browns quarterback, recently, and I was hoping you could share an exchange that you had.
It was after the field, or on the field after the game against the Bills, this preseason game 3, and I walked up to him like, "I'm so excited to see you." Like, go, I was like, kick some butt. I didn't say that word, but kick some butt, kid.
Yeah.
No, go kick some butt, especially week 1. I cannot wait. And he uses some expletives, and I was like, I just hope you're he's like, I'm gonna bleep them up.
Ooh,
There
that's
you go.
being the Cleveland Browns, the week 1 opponent
that's
of the
our week 1
Carolina
opponent.
Panthers.
Depending on. Yeah. So there you have it. No one's surprised that he would think that.
No.
I think the surprise is that it's out there now. Because we had said yesterday, I made a kind of flippant remark, we know Baker, we know who he is. He's going to give the Browns something before kickoff.
Right, which he has.
He has, but in this case, and it's going to be an interesting interview with Cynthia in 5 minutes. I love Cynthia. I think she's a tremendous person. I think she's very good at what she does. She's an analytics expert.
She's great at that.
She
does
great at analytics.
I watched the NFL Network show that she's on where she talks fantasy with Adam
awesome
Rank
with fantasy
and some other
advice.
people. Yeah.
We talked briefly this morning. I don't want to give too much of it away. She said she doesn't quite see how this is a story. I disagree. And I don't know how this is going to go because I love Cynthia.
Doesn't this come down to how Baker felt about this? Did he consider this like a private conversation?
Or
is he screaming this on the field?
I don't think we have to go into that. I think it was an encounter. It wasn't an official media gathering.
Right.
It wasn't. I think when she said what she said, she probably would hope that wasn't on camera or picked up or talked about, particularly because she bleeped out her own expletive that she said when she talked to Baker.
Yeah.
It's a very fine line, and that line is getting fuzzier and fuzzier. The old school journalists will tell you that unless the person has agreed to a formal media session, then anything that might be said is off the record. Because it's not an official, if it's a conversation. Now, a lot of guys that I've talked to just coming up say, before they ever get into anything dicey, LeBron was great at this, off the record.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
As soon as you say that.
Baker clearly didn't say that.
Nope.
There wasn't time. They were two ships passing on the field.
Yeah, but that's fair game then. In my opinion, I'll go to bat for it.
Listen, there are opinions that say exactly what you say.
Don't say that.
And I think Cynthia obviously believes that.
My first reaction, I didn't even think about was she breaking in confidence? And then you and Jason, we were having a group text, and you and Jason both said, hey, this is why, Jason made the point, and he tweeted it, and he said, this is why people hate the media.
Yeah.
I don't like that from Jason. I'm going to talk to him about it when I see him, because most of the reasons people hate the media are crap reasons and unfair reasons.
So we have about a 15% approval rating as a group.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's no.
I don't buy that that's the case.
Well, you don't have to buy it. I'm just telling you that's
what's that based on?
That's what one poll after another. I saw one recently that said we have a 9% approval rating.
Sports media?
Media.
Well, we can't group sports media and political media together.
I don't know if there's been a poll done on sports media. Mikey, if you can find one, I'd be curious.
I can't imagine it's that
Here's what
low.
I'll say, and this is based on hundreds, not dozens, hundreds of conversations with athletes, and even athletes that have crossed over to the media. They're always afraid to put on the dark hat, as they call it.
Right.
Because they know how they're going to be viewed by their former brethren. They know that. I remember I had a long conversation once with, I'm not going to get too specific with what he told me, so I'm not, I
couldn't tell if you were censoring yourself or if you were having a senior moment.
Yeah, it's both.
Okay.
It's both. I don't want to use this player's name because you would be able to figure out who he was, and I'm going to give you very specific things that he said. He covered a team that won many Super Bowls with a coach who's very controversial. And before he came over to ESPN, he had conversations with his former teammates and former coaches about how this would be viewed by them, because his relationship with them supersedes everything. And players will tell you that. Those are the guys they jumped in the foxhole with. Their next move into the media is a career. It's a job. So there's always trepidation from players to do this. Some go in with both feet, and they don't care.
Right.
And they come out guns blazing. Because now they realize, look, I'm going to put everything into the, as they should.
Yeah.
I've had conversations with players that came in tepidly, and I'm like, this isn't for you.
Yeah.
This isn't for you. We're going to ask you things that we're going to want specific, pointed answers, true opinion. And in truth, our contributors on our show run the gamut. We have some that give 0, and then we have some that are just towing the line. They're I think you can figure out who they are.
I just did a tweet over the weekend, and you could pull it up. I'm sure you can find it. I said it. Sometimes I hate being in the media. I hate it. Sometimes I literally wish I did not do this, because there's certain things that people kind of do that I think from a player's perspective or from a person who has relationships with people, I don't like some of the things that go into the game. I don't
like what specifically?
So there are people so I'll give you an example, right? There are people who that literally have vendettas against people, right? There are people that.
But aren't there players and aren't there people in other walks of life that have the same thing?
You're right.
He's
right. They're absolutely
of
media
course
members.
There are.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: they don't write the narrative. You do. The media writes the narrative, and that. So just now, players are getting a platform where they can even have any sort of say in things. But if you're the writer, if you're the narrator, that's powerful, right? Just like players have to watch what they do because they are, to a certain extent, public figures and role models to some people. It's the same thing with the media. Sometimes, if you're writing something, you got to think, you got to pull back and say, hold on. Where am I going with this one? Because if I write this hurts a little bit, especially when you're talking about guys getting in the Hall of Fame. Accolades, those things. Just look. If you don't think it really matters, look at Terrell Owens. Terrell Owens was not a first ballot Hall of Fame.
But he got in the Hall of Fame.
But that's not the point.
Let me ask you this: do you think the players would do a better job of voting for the Hall of Fame? Because I don't think it'd be close. I think they'd suck at it.
No. But I think what I'm saying is the talent level of Terrell Owens. It's undeniable.
He was a first ballot Hall of Famer.
But in the end, what's the difference? He got in the second year.
It's his legacy. If you say something about Bull, that's your legacy, right?
G. Bush, to your point, so players view the Hall of Fame as when you make it to the Hall of Fame, you're now an industry. You're an industry. You can throw bake sales and make as much money as you want. You want to do signing shows? There's a price tag that goes along with that. There are also tiers of Hall of Famers. And the first ballot Hall of Famer, that distinction is powerful.
You think he's not getting a good table at a restaurant because he's second year Hall of Fame?
But you know what?
To my point of being different tiers,
you know what?
There are price tags that come along with appearances. And the first ballot Hall of Famer price tag is bigger.
My problem with what you guys are saying is that you're doing what a lot of fans do, and you're lumping everybody together.
No.
And that's unfair.
No, I'm not.
When the players crap on media, do we care about that?
No,
that gets ignored all the time.
I do care about that, by the way. I do.
Yeah.
I said some people
I believe, and I'll rip, you know me, I'm not afraid to rip a fellow media member. I've done it, and I'll do it again. But I never lump everybody together.
You shouldn't.
And we should.
Wait.
And first of all,
you do lump people together.
I do?
Yeah.
In what way?
Well, how many times have you said, well, there's a typical white guy. You've said that on our show 20 times. Have you not?
Yeah, but I'm joking most of the time.
If you joke about the same thing 20 times, at some point it becomes your reality.
Okay, fine. So all white.
You do lump people together.
All white people.
And you know what? We all do that. I'm not going to beat you up for that because we all do that. And we shouldn't.
But you before lumped sports reporters with political reporters.
You're right.
That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think under one umbrella, we're all media. Yeah. So under that, guys, we are. We all do the same thing.
I think most media and the line is blurred as to who's media and who's not.
And that was my point.
And that's part of the problem.
And so quickly, do we have Cynthia? Is she on?
Not yet.
Okay, we'll wait.
She's logged on now. Give us 1 second.
Okay, so what I would say to that, here's what I'm struggling with today. And I'm struggling with it mightily because this connection to me is a personal friend.
Right.
I love Cynthia. I do. The first thing she said to me when I called her this morning was, how's your family? I love Cynthia.
She's on. We
so
got her.
Let's bring her in. Cynthia Freeland of the NFL Network. Cynthia, we're obviously talking about the Baker Mayfield situation. And before we dive too deeply into it, we played the clip. I want you to, in your own words right now, sort of explain what happened and what the fallout has been from it since it dropped.
Okay.
And it's great to see you again. Let me start with that.
You too. I'm mid-move here. We got a lot of stuff in the background, but,
it's all good.
So all that happened was I shouldn't have shared a private conversation, although I stand by the fact that I'm pro Baker. I hope he succeeds. I hope he has a great career in Carolina. I walked up to him after the game. He looked great. Everything was, like he looked like he's happy. He's like having fun, God forbid. And I'm like, I hope you have a great season. I used some expletives like F them up. Like, I know Baker's spicy and, he's been spicy his whole career, but dating back to college. So, I said that, and then he just kind of agreed with me, and we were just, and I said, started off strong, go. And in fairness, like as a woman, and especially in the media, like I would like him to beat his old team for a lot of reasons, but not the least of which is it feels like, a poetic story. You see a lot of athletes face their former teams and you're like, go show them that they were wrong. Like, get out there and be positive. There's nothing negative.
So let me ask you this. I'm a little confused. So is he the one that started the F them up, or did you say F them up and he co-signed it?
I said this entire season, so not just the Browns, the entire seasons.
Right.
I said go out there and kick some butt and F them up, like meaning everyone. I said started off strong week 1. I can't wait to see you out there week 1. It was not that nefarious at all. It was all pro Baker. And I shared it because I'm pro Baker, and I want everyone to succeed. I want everyone to get a second chance. I want everyone in life to get a fair shake. It was just, this being blown way out of proportion. And it's frustrating because, you know, it's like people are being like, you're not professional. And you're right. I shouldn't have shared a private conversation, but I was sharing like excitement for a person who is in a much better headspace, who looks great, he's in good form. I chose to share it. I shouldn't have shared it. I mean, okay, I shouldn't have shared it.
Have you spoken to him since, Cynthia?
No, I sent him a message, but his PR person just called me from the Panthers, and I'm sure I'll hear from the Browns too. Like, it's not, where are all these people about the quarterback that's going to be playing week 11? That's my question, because my professionalism in question for encouraging him feels a little.
I personally, I can't speak for others, and I personally have no problem with you sharing that story. Part of that is because it gives, it's something interesting for us to talk about, not from your perspective, but just him saying that about the Browns. But that's who Baker is. It is not surprising that he would say that. I honestly didn't give any thought to you sharing that until somebody said it to me, and then I said, oh, maybe, I don't know. But you seem aggravated because obviously you had no, like a lot of times when things like this get out, maybe the person has ill will, and it seems clear there was no ill will from you in this situation.
It's the exact opposite.
Right.
You know what? Like, you're allowed I'm a very professional person. You can ask Jay. Like, I have the amount of stuff that we all know compared to what we share is like this much. I was saying on a podcast, I was showing a positive thing towards a player that has had a hard off season. Like, no matter what, you have to admit that was a difficult off season for something. I shouldn't have shared it, whatever. Like, okay, got it. I'm never going to share anything that's told me again. I think that's also an interesting tactic for whatever. But, long story short, there was no negative intention. It was all about, I was encouraging him. I was like, the whole season, go get it. Like, I'm not going to swear on here, but I was swearing to him. I was like, go show everybody who's wrong. Be the guy who we want you to be.
Cynthia, I first of all, I want to take 1 second and absolutely back up what you said. I've worked with you long enough to know, and I know you as a person too, not just as a journalist. Not that you need me to co-sign for your character, but Cynthia, you know my feelings towards you as a person, and as a professional, and I also understand how these interactions go. And I think one of the things that's going to be debated today, and I'd love for you to weigh in on this, and I know you say, okay, I shouldn't have shared it, I was wrong. So we started the discussion by saying, kind of when there isn't a conversation between reporter and player about what's on and off the record, how does the industry operate? Because you're right. Typically, we share about this much of what we know. And most of what we don't share is because people have told us, and they've said, look, off the record or between us. Are those passing encounters between players and reporters fair game if nothing is discussed, or should they be looked at as off limits unless there's that conversation that they are okay?
I mean, probably should err on the side of off limits unless they say they're okay, which is why I won't do that again. Like, I say that with a little bit of disdain, and it's not the most genuine apology I've ever issued, because to be honest with you, what I said was that I said it first, and he sort of agreed, which is not him even like, anyways, he didn't come up to me like, I'm going to blank them up. Like, that wasn't it at all. Like, it was a positive thing. My point was that there are people who encourage other people and like whatever. So you're right though, but as a general rule, you should, unless it's on the record, it's off the record. But I didn't, and yes, that I will 100% say, and I shouldn't have said it, and I will not say it again like that without being like, can I say that? Because I won't. But the reality is many of us, who are trying to support someone, it is a really nice way to support someone when you say, I saw with my eyes that they're good. I know the math that they're good. I can see their stats that they're doing better and whatever. And 3, I said it to him and he seemed like he was in a good mental place. Like to me, that's a stronger argument. There was no I wasn't sitting there trying to tell Baker to talk crap about. I like the Browns. I'm disappointed in the Deshaun situation, but I like the Browns. I love a lot of players on your team. I write so many great things about
I know
Nick
you do.
Chubb, Myles Garrett, like the whole secondary. Come on, I spend a lot of time. This isn't like anti-Brown sentiment. Yes, I'm a little hurt by the Deshaun stuff. I am a female, and it's weird and it feels confusing. But it was as pro Baker. Who doesn't want to go back and get revenge on their ex?
Yeah, particularly Baker, who's done that a time or two and has sort of really built his brand on it. He's built his brand on proving others who have bet against him that they bet on the wrong pony, essentially. G. Bush, do you have something you want to
say? Cynthia, do you feel like, because I feel like this happens from time to time, do you feel like it's not about what you said, it's about what player you said it about? And in the case is Baker Mayfield, and he's a lightning rod. So if you would have said this about, I don't know, Kirk Cousins, it wouldn't have been a thing, right? It's just, do you believe that the person that this occurred with actually matters? And that's where we're at today.
100%. A lot of people pile on Baker because they want clicks or whatever. Please go look at my social media. I write articles. I don't do hot takes. That's not my vibe, ever. I literally never have. I probably, I probably don't have as many Twitter followers because I don't do that. I was trying to support this person. If I had said it about Sam Darnold, same draft class, similar situation from another team, to be honest with you, I don't think anyone would have even noticed, other than, honestly, since he got hurt in that game, it would have been very inappropriate. But if the situation were reversed and he hadn't gotten hurt, I don't think anyone would have cared if I said it about Sam Darnold. That he was like, I'm going to go out there and get the Jets week 1. Who cares? No one would have cared.
Yeah, I would co-sign that. Yeah. I think Baker's a lightning rod one way or another. And part of
I didn't realize how much of a lightning rod, or I wouldn't have shared it. I was trying to be supportive of him. Truly.
No. I do understand that. I know how you interact with. One of the reasons players love and respect you is because you treat them as human beings, not as football players. I've seen that firsthand for a long time, and I
could feel her frustration. I understand.
I can too, and I feel badly for you.
I think we've all had that. We've all had that moment where we said something on the air that had no ill will or no bad intent, and somebody took it another way, or maybe it was even a way you didn't even think about it, and then it creates a life of its own. So, that's
Cynthia,
frustrating.
I want to do this because I have long touted you as the in my eyes, and I probably, it's clouded by my personal relationship with you, but I've always told anybody that wants to listen to what I think about analytics, if you want to read somebody and you want to follow somebody who knows it, in my view, not just as well as anybody, but I've always thought your strength is communicating numbers, which can be very confusing to fans in a digestible and understandable way. I think no one in the business does it as well as you do. So with that in mind, I would love to tap into that knowledge and ask you from an analytics standpoint. We always talk about, well, the Browns are going to be 6-5 by the time Deshaun Watson gets back on the field, and we're just all gobbledygook. Where are the Browns analytically in your mind as we get ready to go into week 1?
The Browns are in a good, well, first of all, the schedule for the Browns is favorable. So that's a good piece of news, because a lot of teams underestimate the value of their first 4 games being achievable games, especially when you have some new faces on the team, some potential changes. When looking at your wide receiving core in general, that's an area where I'm a little concerned about how it's all going to come together. I love Amari Cooper. I think he's a great player, but obviously it's a new team. There's a new system. There's 2 quarterbacks he has to get adjusted to. So that adjustment period is a big deal. So that's the first thing. Favorable schedule is good. I really like this defensive front. Clearly, this is a very, very, very good defense. I like the secondary that backs it up. It's a really interesting, nice blend of, a lot of us in analytics get into the debate of what's more important, lockdown corners or, the front. And my answer is both. So if you have both, then you're in good shape. So the question mark for me is a lot more about, the ability for the wide receivers to get those big plays, which have been proven to be, big chunk passing plays are very helpful in terms of determining wins. So that's the question mark for me coming out of the gate. But of course, and I can't get through this without saying how much I like Nick Chubb. And I think I like both of your running backs a lot, but it's an interesting note to have a guy like Nick Chubb not talked about maybe in terms of how valuable his extra 3-4 steps, those yards after contact. Oh, look at that. Perfect. Your producer is amazing. Nice. So it's the
Don't tell him that. That's all we need.
Good job.
Yeah.
Right. So it's those big chunk run yards. And by the way, everybody knew he has the ball. So, I as much as I like Kareem Hunt too. It's not anti that. It's just pro Nick Chubb, right? Those yards after contact are just really, really, really impressive. And those 20+ yard runs, we're looking at him right there. Those big plays are huge in terms of determining who wins football games.
By the way, and Cynthia does the football show, the fantasy football show on NFL Network, which I watch, and she got me aggravated because she says that Justin Herbert's better than my boy Joe Burrow. But I get it; they're both great. But what's interesting when it comes to fantasy though is Nick Chubb is probably the biggest gap between great back but not great fantasy back. Is there anybody that's a bigger difference between actual back and fantasy back?
It depends on your scoring in a lot of ways because, some of these guys who are really good in scoring, if you're playing PPR, obviously, the guys who catch more balls are really, really valuable. So, and then, Derrick Henry doesn't have as much of a shared backfield situation. So there's no one vulturing his touchdowns. Right. But I think that there's you could make the argument that kind of in the reverse way, like an A.J. Dillon is a really good player that, he's nowhere near as good at valuable fantasy wise as Nick Chubb, but for the return on investment in those later rounds, like an A.J. Dillon who has more of a Nick Chubb profile with the Aaron Jones being the guy who gets more of the receptions, that's a good late round pick for sure.
Yeah. One other thing, not fantasy wise, although Kareem Hunt is a fine fantasy back when he has the opportunity. But, there's been a lot of talk about trading Kareem Hunt. I think because Jacoby Brissett's the quarterback and you really have to rely on the running game the first 11 weeks, I think it's insane to think about trading Kareem Hunt. Jay here wants to trade him from some slappy wide receiver.
See, there he goes, mischaracterizing me again. Cynthia, this is horrible.
This is what's wrong with the sports media right here.
What Jay said.
A slappy.
Media. Sports
what
media.
Jay said, Cynthia, was
this is why
the Browns
2%
would be foolish not to listen to other offers.
Of course, but no, Cynthia.
I never said they should trade him. Go back and look at the tape.
But Cynthia, is there any chance a team would trade a really good wide receiver for Kareem Hunt? Just not going to happen, right?
It's hard because, you have to look at the landscape of wide receivers and also the future, right? So I think we're in this weird bubble with between NIL and the trade portal for college. So wide receivers might be a little dry compared to in this draft compared to the past two because it is more lucrative for them to stay in college. So why would they go on this rookie pick? So point being, so you're in this weird loggerhead of the wide receivers are becoming really, really valuable. We saw these wide receiver contracts of $1 gazillion. So maybe there'll be something where some guys some weird cap casualty along the way, but I think it'd be hard to get one of those top tier wideouts because people are going to need to keep them, especially given kind of what's potentially coming out of college or the fear of what's coming out of college or not coming out of college.
Let me ask you this question, Cynthia. Based on what you've looked at with film and based on what you've looked at in the numbers out there in the ether, would you pay Lamar Jackson?
I would. I would. So all these contracts look a little weird. You have to remember those voidable years at the end. You have to get the real skinny on the contract, not the hey, newsflash, it really goes, this is coming full circle with bringing me on. You can't just read the tweet that says, Kyler Murray gets $46.1 million per year, because it's really how the structure of the contract works. So I do think that you want to pay Lamar Jackson, but you need to make it work for how the Ravens' whole system works so that you can get all the right pieces around him as well. So it has to be the right contract, not just this flashy, because you have to look through and read the entire contract of all. But I think Lamar Jackson is a guy who, those rush yards and the ability to, he gets more favorable passing situations because every single time defenses have to be well, this guy could just escape and run for 35 yards.
Cynthia, you made it clear what you think you hope is going to happen in Week 1. What do you really think is going to happen between the Panthers and the Browns? Do you have any predictions?
Yeah, I mean, I've already run like some models for. I mean, obviously, barring any, I'm gonna an asterisk here, barring any weird thing happens with the 53 that I can't foresee today. But I do have the Browns winning that game. So
yes,
here we go. Here we go.
Yep.
Was it close in your model?
I mean, look, everything looks close week 1 because week 1 we have the most uncertain. There's a lot of uncertainty. We're not sure what we're looking at.
Sure.
I can't remember I have to go look. I didn't prepare with the exact number, but I do know the Browns win it because my conversation was nothing to do with my math.
Right.
Last year, I wrongly predicted that the Steelers would finish under 500 for the first time in the Tomlin era. I'm double downing. I'm saying they're finishing under 500 again this year, even though I was wrong last year. Will I be right this year?
I don't think you'll be right, but not by a lot, because now you can't finish 500, right? So you think it's going to be 9-8. So I think it's going to be right around there, and mostly because their defense is so scary that, it's going to give them. Their O-line is not the strength of the team, so their defense though is very strong. So it's hard for me to see how they don't sneak out some extra wins. It's a hard division that you guys are in. I have to look at their schedule completely, but I think I have them 9 wins.
It's tough.
Screw the haters.
Listen,
screw the haters.
Yeah, and it took courage for you to come on, and you met all this stuff head on, as I knew you would. It's great to see you again. Continued success to you, and thank you very much for making time for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And this is all. Hopefully, we can all enjoy the fact that this is a sport where we all want to F each other up. That's the fun part, right?
That's right.
That's the whole idea of the sport. Yeah, that's the whole idea. Cynthia, thank you very much.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network. Every time I see her, I think about one time I had her on as a guest, and I don't know why I did this. Her name's Cynthia. She goes by Cynthia, and that's it. In the middle of the segment, as I'm forwarding another question, I called her Cindy. And everybody at the table just kind of froze. What happened? What did you just call her?
You just make that up, dog?
Yeah.
Did you just come throw that out there?
I don't know. She was like, I've never been called Cindy in my life. I'm like, sorry,
Make
Cynthia.
sure you
I don't know where
call
that
Mary
came
Kay
from.
Angela.
I want to commend Cynthia for starters.
Yeah.
She didn't have to do this.
No, and she was clearly upset by the whole situation.
Yeah, and it got a little. I hope that she keeps her chin up and that she meets this head on. What I like more than anything from our conversation, and I didn't know how this was going to go. I was fearful that she would say, look, there was nothing wrong with what I did. She didn't say that.
Right.
She said, I shouldn't have done it.
Right.
I won't do it again.
But clearly in the moment, she didn't realize.
At the end of the day, I just want to. This is football,
It's
man.
not that
Yeah, I know.
It's football, dog.
She'll be fine. She'll be fine. There will be some players that probably, will look at it a little odd.
They'll come around.
But I think the key to the whole thing is that she acknowledged that, the reason I asked her the question the way I did, Mary Kay Cabot's coming on next, and she can give us her thoughts on that. If there isn't a discussion that it's on the record, then it should be assumed that it's off the record. That's just kind of the rules of engagement.
Frankly, for me, I'm happy it's on the record because hopefully that'll give the Browns extra motivation.
I know. Both tweeted in our texted in our group text. Hey, this is great for us.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
Is Mary Kay with us?
Mary Kay, you on?
I'm here.
There
I don't
she
know.
is.
Were you able to listen to any of Cynthia? And if not, let us know what you missed, and we can sort of paraphrase it for you. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on the whole thing.
I caught the very tail end, so I did not see the beginning of it. So sorry about that, but so I didn't see her reaction to what was said and how she said it. So if you want to catch me up,
I will. I'll quickly paraphrase. To me, the bit of news in that was that Cynthia actually said first, "Go F them up." That was She did not tell the story that way on the podcast. So I can understand why Baker would be like, "Wait a minute, I didn't say that. I repeated what she said." So she did do a bit of cleanup on the show.
Did he say I didn't say that?
I'm pretty sure.
I'm sure Baker's people reached out to Cynthia and said, according to Baker, you're the one that used that phrase, and he repeated it. She left that out of the story when she told it on the podcast. So she saw Baker. She said he looked great. He looked happy. She had said to him, go F them up. And he had repeated that, I'm going to F them up. So that part of the story was kind of lost in the translation until just now. She cleaned that up
But
just
I think
now.
that's irrelevant in terms of it being bulletin board for material for the Browns.
No, I don't think it is because she used that phraseology first. Mary Kay, am I right? Doesn't that kind of make a difference the way you look at it? It wasn't Baker volunteering, I'm going to go F them up.
If you're in the Browns locker room, do you care about the difference?
No, it may not make a difference to the Browns. You're going to use whatever you can as bulletin board material. But Mary Kay, am I wrong in saying that it does make a difference because she used that exact phrase first and he just repeated it?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I will really try at all times to avoid really criticizing how somebody else does their job, because it's really tough out here.
It is.
It's a tough gig out here, and we're expected to do everything the right way all the time, and sometimes we make mistakes. And if she said that she should not have shared that on the podcast, which I think that's what she was saying at the end there,
she did say
then then that's fine. That's cool. And, I think I'd probably just kind of stand on that. She probably is saying that maybe I should not have shared that because, first of all, it's Baker Mayfield, right? And it's the Cleveland Browns, and it's just a flammable situation as it is. And, I've already seen a couple of Browns players, respond to it a little bit. So if she said it like that, then, and she feels like maybe she shouldn't have said it, then she can handle that how she wants. I will never criticize, or at least try not to criticize how another reporter does their job. It's just it's a jungle out
I
here.
respect the hell out of you for that.
It's hard.
I respect the hell out of you, Mary Kay, because it is a fraternity, sorority, whatever you want to call it. We know how difficult this is, and it's easy to throw darts.
Yeah. I don't know how difficult it is because I'm not a writer, Mary Kay, but I do love to rip Tony Grossi from time to time. You don't have to comment on that. I just do it. But sorry, don't be good off the side. But wait, Mary Kay, I haven't seen the Browns players' reaction. What has been the Browns players' reaction, and do you think this gives them extra motivation to kick the crap out of Baker?
Yeah, they'll use it as bulletin board material. All the way back to when I was covering Bill Belichick here, they looked for things like this, couldn't wait for things like this to help them. And they use anything that they possibly can. So they will use it. Of course, they'll use it. And they're saying all the right things. When we talked to Myles Garrett last week, he said, you know what? No, I don't have any extra motivation for Baker. He's not my rival. But if I get a couple of sacks along the way, that will be fine. So that's the note that they're trying to take. Now, I did see something from a player, and he deleted it. So when a player deletes something like that, I let them stand by their delete. And so I don't want to say the name, but I did see one player that eyeballed it or something like that. But, if you're going to take the time to delete something, then I think we should let people, make a quick little mistake with the index finger and then delete it quickly. So
very interesting.
So I'm not going to say that.
Mary Kay, we talk, and I talk to you, and we cross paths, and we talk about different things all the time off the record. One of the things that I find fascinating is you've been in this game for a long period of time. How do you mix? Because some players you do have a relationship with. Some players you watch come up through the ranks. How do you mix that with telling and doing stories and different things like that? Because sometimes you could print things that some people that know you are uncomfortable with. How do you go about towing that line?
Well, you have to make choices pretty much on sometimes on a daily basis. There are things that you will leave out. There are things that you will put in. But I think for the most part, you try as best you possibly can. And I think you guys have run into this yourself. You try as best you possibly can to differentiate between what was supposed to be on the record and what was supposed to be off the record. What am I allowed to use here? What am I not allowed to use? And not everybody knows to say, hey, don't use that. That was off the record. You have to be very, very clear about that. Because if you're talking to a reporter, generally, unless you establish that it's off the record, everything seems to be, it's fair game for the most part. But there are gray areas. There are times when you have a conversation after a game, like Cynthia did with Baker, where, you're on the field and you're kind of just talking off the cuff. And I guess you have to make the decision on your own. Did he intend that to be for the record or off the record? So you just have to walk that fine line at all times. And you also have to, you have to be cognizant of the relationships that you want to maintain. And you don't want to throw somebody under the bus because then you're burning a bridge.
Mary Kay, have you ever had a situation that you'd care to share with us, that you'd be willing to share with us, where you feel like maybe you shouldn't have quoted someone on the record when it might have been a personal conversation where somebody's been upset with you for printing something that they thought was between the two of you?
I can't think of anything right off the top of my head, but yes, I'm sure there were plenty of times along the way where there are little discrepancies. And here's the other thing that happens when you're a reporter. You can be in the middle of a conversation with someone and it can last 30 minutes. And in that 30-minute conversation, about 12 different times they'll say, that part was off the record. That part was off the record. That part was off the record. And you have to be so careful about that. So I try to tape the conversations and then I try to make big notes and put it in highlights. That's off the record. And you just really want to be very, very careful about all of that so that you're doing this job in such a way that you can, once again, be very professional and maintain those relationships. But right off the top of my head, right now at the moment, I can't really think of a specific example of something that was supposed to be off the record that I wrote.
That's because she's a damn professional, folks.
Yeah,
she's
you're
a damn
exactly
professional.
right. Mary Kay, I have one more question, and then I'm done with this. I want to talk Browns and not journalism. But you had said something there where you try your best to figure out, was this usable or was this not? There's no handbook that we're given when we go to journalism school. There are unwritten rules. There are a lot of unwritten rules. There are ethics in journalism that we all know. But tell me if I'm wrong by doing this, because I've done this a number of times, and I was always glad that I did. But maybe I violated some unwritten rule of journalism. I've had a couple of situations that I can think of, and one of them was a very big story where I actually called the player back, and I asked him, so this particular portion, because this athlete said many times during this conversation, that's off the record, that's off the record. So I actually called him to confirm, is it okay that I use this? Did I violate some sort of rule of journalism by doing that? I was just trying to make sure I was getting it right.
Oh, no, that's absolutely what you would do. I've done that before plenty of times where somebody said something that I'm assuming was supposed to be off the record, and maybe that part they didn't necessarily say that is absolutely off the record. I've checked back with that person.
Right.
Because once again, a lot of this business is about building relationships and maintaining relationships, and you just don't want to burn down the house. I mean, you want to do the best that you can to be professional, to break the news or to tell the news as best you possibly can, but not to violate anyone's confidence along the way. So that was the right way to handle that.
All right, Mary Kay, let's get to what really is the big story today, and that's cut down day, right? We've seen reports of Johnny Stanton being cut. We've seen reports of Josh Rosen, a few other guys. First of all, let's start with the running back room because Stanton's gone. John Kelly or whatever his name is gone. I said earlier, I don't know if I said this on the show or before the show, that I think they're going to keep 5 running backs, including DeErnest and Felton and the rookie whose name is escaping me. Am I crazy? Ford. Am I crazy? Are they going to keep all 5, or can they not do that?
No, I mean, if you're counting Demetric Felton as a running back, then yes, they're keeping all 5. You could also put him in the receiver room, which would give them 6 of those right now, according to like the 53 that I put out yesterday. But in the running back room, I actually did have Johnny Stanton on my 53 because I thought that they could use him as a tight end, as a fullback, as an H-back. And I'm guessing that there's a chance that they will try to re-sign him to the practice squad. So, remember that as you're going through these cuts today, it doesn't mean that these guys are gone and that you're never going to see them again. True. It's that they're moving around the chess pieces right now. And some of these guys will end up on the 16-man practice squad. Some of these guys could possibly end up on some kind of a reserve list, Deshaun Watson being one of those. And then, so you'll see some of these guys back. But in terms of the running backs, I do think just the pure running back room would include the 4 guys that we all, know and talk about. And that's Chubb, Hunt, Dearness Johnson, and Jerome Ford.
Mary Kay, Josh Gordon released today by the Chiefs. There's always going to be that tie with the Browns. Have you had any conversations with anyone in the organization about whether or not they would be interested in bringing Josh Gordon back to try to improve a room that's, I think most people would agree is the weakness of their team?
He shot.
Well, that's your opinion. I'm just wondering if she's had any conversations with the front office or anybody on the team.
Okay.
You know what? I haven't, because it's not even a road that I think that they would go down. So it didn't occur to me to try to ask that yet at this point, because they've gone to that well so many times. It's just not a road that they even need to think about going down. Especially, I mean, one team can only have so many distractions on it, right? I mean, you need to kind of, they have enough on their plate right now without going back to that well. So I didn't even ask, and it would just, shock me if they even thought about it.
Yeah. Me too, but it's the Browns we're talking about, so I had to ask.
Who's on the bubble, Mary Kay, and who do you think that they might get rid of, that they might cut, that they might end up regretting down the line?
Once this Cleveland Browns front office gets to this point, they've done most of their big business. They've done most of their contract restructurings. They've done most of their big cuts. Most of the guys that will get cut today will be no major surprises. This is not a situation where, J.C. Treader is still on the roster wondering if they're going to turn it over to Nick Hare. I mean, they take care of all this stuff. So I don't think we're going to have any big surprises today. I mean, it'll be mostly things that we knew were going to happen. And, with a few things here and there, guys that they might want to keep that they'll try to get back in some way. I think there are a couple of defensive backs that will make the team that are undrafted. Now, Sean Jolly is one of them. Not sure in the final analysis if they'll be able to keep the young cornerback, but he had a really nice preseason, and I know they would like to keep him. Rookie safety D'Anthony Bell, I know they really want to keep him. So these are some guys that will make the team that that we weren't 100% sure about. And then Michael Woods, even though he missed most of the preseason with his hamstring injury, he's going to make the team. He had a phenomenal couple of weeks and an offseason before he suffered the hamstring injury. One to keep an eye on is Chase Winovich. He suffered a hamstring throughout the whole training camp. And so, can they afford to keep him? I put him on my 53. I think they will try to keep him. But, these are some of the names that are kind of out there.
Mary Kay, what's the % chance that they add a defensive tackle or receiver by the first game?
You know what? I don't know that they're clamoring to add a defensive tackle. I think it's a position that they look at as, they can get the job done pretty much with what they have. They're very excited about Jordan Elliott. They've liked what they've seen from Taven Bryan. What they need is for the other two young guys to really step it up over the next couple of weeks, particularly Perion Winfrey. He has not graded out well so far. So he needs to pick it up a notch. But, it's an area they can look to bolster a little bit, but not one that I think they're rushing out to do anything at. Wide receiver, I've been saying all along, they need to add another experienced veteran wide receiver. You don't want to have Amari Cooper go down and you don't have just some guy there that can get it done. So that's one where I would definitely add a veteran. I don't know if they agree with that.
Mary Kay, the SS Garoppolo has left the port. That ain't happening. And there's Josh has looked great in the preseason.
Which one?
Joshua Dobbs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Are they comfortable with a guy that's taken 17 snaps in real live action in the NFL being one play away from guiding their season? Or do you think they might make a move to bring a veteran quarterback in here just as an insurance policy?
I think they will keep their eyes open, in cutting Josh Rosen, and perhaps they'll bring him back on the practice squad. But I think that ideally, if somebody were floating around out there that had some starting experience, that they would probably like to bring that player in. Having said that, they were very excited about what they saw with Joshua Dobbs during the preseason and how they can utilize his dual threat ability and all the things that he can do. So in the event that they don't find somebody that they like better, then they'll go into the season with Joshua as the number 2, and they will continue to kind of look around and see what happens over the first couple of weeks. As far as Jimmy G is concerned, people think that this means that there's no way the 49ers are going to trade him. He now has a very tradable contract. And, if somebody comes calling between now and the trade deadline and they need a starter, they will trade him if they get the right offer. So it doesn't mean this is over yet.
Mary Kay, you had a story, and I think the story actually went to Sports Illustrated as well. And you talked to a top executive that had her reservations about Deshaun Watson. Can you tell us about what went into some of the things that were in that article, as the executive is worried about, Deshaun Watson moving forward, and she's not sure that he's completely rehabilitated and ready to go come December. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, first of all, her name is Rita Smith, and she doesn't actually work for the NFL. She's an advisor to the NFL on matters of sexual assault and domestic violence. She's been in that business for about 40 years, and she's very well respected in that space. And so I did talk to her about that. And her whole piece, her whole takeaway was the fact that so far from Deshaun, she hasn't seen the willingness to admit any wrongdoing. And that has her concerned in terms of reoffending. And so the takeaway, my takeaway from that was, that he really needs to demonstrate to the NFL and to the third-party providers that he understands that there was some disconnect between him and the women in those rooms, and that he has to figure out why he thinks one thing and they think another, and that he needs to, demonstrate and show them that he's willing to make sure that this never happens again, because that's what the whole point is to get him to the point where he understands that no matter what he thinks happened, that nothing like this can happen again. So that's the whole piece here, is that, they want him to understand that something went wrong, what it is, and how to prevent it.
Do you agree with that, Mary Kay? Do you think she has a good point there?
Yeah, I do think she has a good point there. I do think that she has a good point. In that last press conference that Deshaun had, I do think that, I, for one, felt that there wasn't enough of, hey, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this right. I'm not exactly sure why there was this disconnect, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do the work. If I've done something wrong in those situations, I'm going to get it right. And I will do whatever it takes. I'm going to make this team proud of me. I'm going to make this community proud of me. And I have work to do. And I have already started that work. I'm going to continue that work. I thought there should have been a little bit more of that than the continuous, I stand on my innocence. So, maybe the messaging was wrong. Maybe his mind is in the right place heading into this counseling. But it seems to me that he's got to get it right in a hurry in order to get back on the field.
Do you think that blindsided the Browns after they had finally figured this out and hopefully gotten at least moving in the right direction, got the suspension and whatnot? Do you think that surprised them when he came out there and gave that, what was a really, really atrocious apology? Never use the word triggered anymore, by the way, Deshaun, but do you think that they expected that, or do you think they were listening to that and they were like, oh, come on, man?
I think the Browns would have liked to have seen a little bit more of what I just described in terms of, let's make sure that we're moving forward on this. Let's make sure that we are going to get this right, and we're going to do whatever it takes to, to make sure that this doesn't happen again, because that's what everybody wants. That's what the NFL wants. That's what Deshaun wants. That's what the accusers want. Anybody connected with this situation wants to make sure that if there was any kind of behavior that should never happen again, that it doesn't. And so I believe that they probably would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that.
Mary Kay, do you believe that when you look at the situation, and obviously, he didn't have the greatest press conference in the world. A lot of people were upset with what he said, frankly, to be frank about the situation. However, don't you think that you have to give a person an opportunity to show and prove? He's going to be gone until December. If he comes out and says anything at this point, it looks like more rhetoric than anything. Are you more interested? Because in my case, I'm more interested in seeing the work and the progress that he's going to make over these next months, rather than him saying anything. I think the work, and we have to give him a little opportunity and room to actually show the different things that I am doing, and then come back and say, this is what I've been doing and working on.
Yes, I hear exactly what you're saying. And I almost think it was sort of a sending up a warning flag. I think that, Rita Smith was saying, what I've heard so far has me concerned in terms of the energy for possible reoffending. And right now, I haven't seen out of him any willingness to admit any wrongdoing, and therefore to get him to the point where we all make sure that this never happens again. That there's work to do. So, in some ways, I almost think it was, preempting what's going to happen in this treatment and in these appointments, to sort of say, like, the mindset going in has got to be different, or it's going to be hard to get him to point B. So that's where I think, she was coming from.
Mary Kay, we appreciate your time. Quickly before we let you go, the health of this Browns team and the 53-man as you see it right now, Are there any areas that we should be concerned about with injuries? How are the Browns overall health-wise?
Well, I would say that I do think it would help to have a veteran backup quarterback, and I do think it would really help to have a veteran wide receiver. If they can accomplish those two things, I think a lot of people would have more of a comfort level heading into the season. But the rest of the positions, I think they're very, very solid at.
All right, very
Thanks,
good.
Mary Kay.
Mary Kay of Cleveland.com. Great information as always. Good to see you, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mary.
I think, every year when you assess the strength of the football team, whether it's your team or other teams that they're playing, everybody circles, and it kind of becomes a narrative that feeds itself. Everybody's talking about the receivers and the linebackers and the interior front of the defensive line. And I think that's been the case here. We've quickly identified where I don't want to say where they're weak, where there's concern, and in some cases major concern.
But they appear to be weak. I don't think is unfair.
Well,
appear they might not be.
Yeah,
but,
appear. That's why I say it's perception right now. Cynthia's point. I remember that talking to gamblers that make a living on this, they always say, "I don't bet the first 4 weeks of the season. Why would you do that?" It's all about available analytics piles, and that's why Cynthia said, it's the first game of the season, so when I run my models, there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, sure.
In week 10, there's fewer unknowns.
Is this team going to gel? Is they going to have a good vibe? You can't quantify that kind of stuff.
You remember last year, everybody after week 4 was saying this defense might be the worst defense we've ever had.
Right.
And then look what we had the last 6 to 8 games of the season. Joe Woods figured it out. Yeah. The defense ended up being one of the strengths of the team. So personally, we don't know yet. But
personally, I'm much more concerned about defensive tackle than I am about wide receiver. I know you guys have been on wide receiver. I'm not overly concerned about wide receiver. I'm not saying I love their wide receiving core, but I'm not that concerned personally. I'm much more concerned about defensive tackle. To me, it's the bigger issue.
I'll say that because you have an established guy in Amari Cooper. You got guys. David Bell caught the ball well. Looks like and they have tight ends.
Yeah.
You see why they gave David
Njoku
money.
And David Bell, I have much more hope for David Bell than any of the defensive tackle options.
I do too.
But that D tackle room, I play defensive line.
Yeah.
And if you can't stop the run, it's one of the most painful things in your life because it's 3 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards.
Brutal to watch, too.
Well, it was the second preseason game, I believe, Philadelphia, where it was, I think they had 2 or 3 drives where it was just 80 yards, 12 plays, touchdown. 80 yards, 12 plays, touchdown. That's death to a football team. That is slow death. Your defense gets exhausted. And then they get exposed in other ways in the second half. I'll qualify something that I said. I am concerned greatly about the wide receivers, and it's part because of what the clay is, what the mold of clay is that they have to work with. The other reason I'm very concerned is who's at the wheel, and I don't mean the quarterback. Were the wide receivers great last year? And there were 2 great wide receivers on the roster. This, for whatever reason, Stefanski has not proven yet that he can consistently get the ball to wide receivers in creative ways. And
that's completely fair.
Yeah, so that's why my biggest area of concern is the wide receiver room. Not necessarily because of the talent they have, although when you look at it, it is lacking any name power. And I'm not sold on Donovan Peoples-Jones. I'm not sold on Anthony Schwartz. And I think of equal concern is the offensive coordinator, quite frankly.
I was watching my man Ken Carman. I know a lot of people think I hate Ken. I don't hate Ken. We kind of bust each other's
Why
chops.
would anybody think that?
Because we have our history of busting each other's cojones
well,
on
that's
the air.
good business for the radio station.
I certainly don't hate him personally. I bust his chops.
Now, me on the other hand,
hates him.
Always talking about
see what I did right there? Shout out to Ken.
Ken's
man.
very good at what he does.
And yesterday, by the way, I didn't mention it was the 11th anniversary of the radio station, so I was.
Oh, yesterday was?
Yeah, yesterday was.
Okay.
So, but anyway, I saw him on TV. He was doing he and the guys were doing some predictions on the Browns, and he made a comment about how he thinks the Bengals might go a little backwards because Zach Taylor, he questions him as a coach. And I don't think the Bengals are going to go backwards, but I agree with him that Zach Taylor, I question him as a coach too. I don't think he's that good a coach. I think the Bengals have the talent to overcome him. And I thought about it. I said, well, it's the same thing with the Browns, as you just said. We all got hot and bothered for Stefanski his rookie year as a coach. He did a pretty good job, and he took a team that had not done any winning, just like with Baker, right? Like Baker won that one playoff game, so a lot of our fans decided, we can't get rid of him. He won a playoff game. And to a lesser degree, the coach got the same pass.
Yeah.
And I think the rest of us are all like, okay, well, he sucked last year, and he better figure it out.
That's where the spotlight glares hottest this year. That in my mind, that's where the glare of the spotlight is going to be.
I don't want to hear about no 3-8 with Jacoby Brissett. We better win some games.
I'm going to tell you this. If you go and put in the chat, people know in the chat, you know what it is. How many times have you gone and watched the 4 o'clock game for the other team? Browns play at 1, you go watch at 4. And you watch teams run basic passing concepts and be wide open.
Yep. And make it look easy.
And I'm like, can you not just simply copy and paste that from the film and say, we're going to run that play? Because to me,
enraging.
The Browns, watching them, it's like pulling teeth. If they complete a pass, it's short, and 8 guys is around the ball. It's contested, it's tight, and I'm like, wow, this is when you go watch these other teams, and it could be anybody. The concepts are scheming their best players open, and Jay said it. They had 2 good receivers the year before, and we still didn't see the level of progression that we wanted to see with receivers.
And I think if you as tough as I've been on Baker, as tough as you've been on Baker, we don't think Baker sucks.
No.
We don't think he's the worst quarterback in the league. He's a middle average quarterback, right? So when you had an average quarterback and you had talented receivers and you had the best backfield in the league, you need to figure out a way to make it work. And I understand Brissett's not as good as Baker, but still, there are plenty of mediocre quarterbacks in the league that are able to put up some big numbers sometimes, even if the team doesn't always win, but they're putting up numbers because, as you say, they're scheming guys open, and Stefanski, to this point, hasn't done a great job. He's got to do it this year.
Is he overly infatuated with this whole tight end concept?
I think so.
He is. I think he is.
I hope they change it because they only have 2 real tight ends this year.
I think he.
Well, they're keeping the third.
No, but I'm saying only 2 that you that are probably going to play routinely.
I think sometimes in the way he wants to do it in the analytics scheme, I don't think they want one guy getting the bulk of the production anywhere.
No, just look at how he uses the running back.
That's just exactly how
he's got everybody on a pitch count.
It's a pitch count. So what happens is instead he leaves a lot of plays on the field, which he could be getting to if he said, no, this guy's going to perform and this guy. I don't mind not having the receivers. The only way it makes sense for the Browns not to have receivers and filling out that 2 through 4 or 5 position is if they're going to use David Njoku and Kareem Hunt.
Right.
If they're going to
a lot.
Yes.
And I don't know if they're going to do that.
G. Bush, to your point, and I said this yesterday, I said one of the things that I think internally the organization had this discussion. Njoku needs to be a much bigger piece on the chessboard.
He needs to have.
So pay him. And now let's see what happens to his production.
He needs to have 800-plus yards and 8+ touchdowns.
Yes.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
The weapons are there. Everybody says, Njoku passes the look test. Look at this guy.
Yeah.
He's Superman. So you've got these pieces. My guess is maybe it was DePodesta. I don't know. Maybe it was an analytics angle where they said, guys, you got these Jaguars, and you're using them to go to church on Sunday.
I know, yeah.
Nonsense.
That's your best one.
Let's take this thing down the boulevard on a Friday night with the lights flashing and the horn blaring.
Yeah.
And let's use these guys. They're Pro Bowl talent.
And Jay, to your point and to G's point, to me,
I listen to you a lot.
The great NFL coaches and play callers don't have a set system or don't have a set, Bill Belichick runs I know it's not running a different offense, but it feels like he runs a new offense every week.
Because
he adjusts.
What he does is, and I was fascinated, I had a conversation with Eric Mangini once about this.
Yeah.
Mangini was hired by the 49ers, and I need to follow up with Eric and ask him about this. He was hired not as a defensive coordinator. What he was hired to do when he was working with the 49ers was to look at the opposing team's defense.
Adjust accordingly.
And consult the coaches how you would attack that.
Right.
So it was almost like reverse engineering, and that's what Bill does in New England.
Yeah.
Bill Long says, that's why having his players, unless it was Tom Brady, was maddening on offense for fantasy. Because
you never wanted those guys in fantasy.
If the analytics tell you that this team is 3rd in the league against the rush, guess what he's going to do?
That's right.
He's going to run the ball 5 times.
How many times would you have James White one week has 10 catches for 90 yards, and the next game he doesn't see the ball.
Doesn't touch the ball.
It's not a great thing is everyone in the league, we all know that he loves running a tight end like really heavy tight end offense.
Yeah.
If we all know that, you know who else does that is coaches for other teams.
There's no creativity. We've seen no creativity in this offense.
And I like, and Andy Reid does this too. I don't want to give just the credit to Bill, but what Bill, I think, has done better than any other coach in the history, and he's changed the way other coaches game plan, is he doesn't have a set offense. You're right. He's not about, coming at you one way.
Right.
His offense is this. What is the opponent weak on?
Right.
And if they
take advantage of
if they can't cover tight ends over the middle of the field, then his tight ends are going to have 14, 15 catches for 200 yards and a couple touchdowns.
Right.
Mm-hmm. If they can't stop the end sweeps, then he's going to give them a heavy dose of end sweeps from the time they get off the bus.
Yeah.
And I think too often last year, it was Stefanski trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Yes.
The analytics and the weakness of the defense might have been one thing, but he was just like, no, that's not what we do. We do this. It's up to them to stop
And by the
it.
way, we need
they did.
And we need to do that on defense too. Like, I don't think Joe Woods was being all that creative last year either.
Oh, no. That in the first part of the year, and this is another thing that scares me.
Yeah.
Joe Woods has the defense. He has his pieces and parts.
No doubt.
They've given him all the vegetables and fresh produce that he wants. I need a great meal from day one, from the appetizers on. I need that. And the reason is because I'm counting on Myles Garrett and the rest of those guys to carry me to a point where Stefanski can even figure out what's the best offense for Jacoby Brissett. Because let's be clear, Jacoby Brissett has played like 3 snaps, and he didn't look all that great.
Yeah.
And when you going on these games and you need to be and consistently in these games, I need Joe Woods to say, look, it's okay if I could be aggressive from day one. Don't sit back.
Yeah. They need to blitz more. They never blitz. I mean, there's no, and like, not every week. Like, some teams, if you blitz them too much, you're going to get killed. But, like, sometimes you got to do it.
You should look up how, and I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
How are other teams at picking up the blitz?
That's right. A team like the Ravens, like Lamar Jackson, has struggled with the blitz. A team like Carolina, Baker has struggled with the blitz. Whereas some quarterbacks stay cool and calm.
Looks that are going to confuse the offense. And this is all common sense stuff, but for some reason, it doesn't seem
frustrating.
Like they're matching up game plan to opponent.
And to your point, G, in terms of the talent, I mean, think about we talk so much about the skill position talent on offense, but like, you can make an argument that they have 7 players. I would say their top 2 corners, their top 2 safeties, JOK, and both their defensive ends. Like, if you told me any of those 7 guys made a Pro Bowl, I would not be surprised.
I'm with you.
That's 7 guys.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little stretch on JOK, maybe a little stretch on Delpit, but I think it's possible.
You probably have 5 on offense, Bull.
Yeah.
Maybe 6.
So if you have 7 guys that could potentially be Pro Bowlers, and none of us would be surprised, you better be a top 5 defense.
If it happens where it's 3 and 8, I don't want to hear anybody. I don't want to hear anybody.
I'm not giving it passes.
No, nobody. No, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the coaching staff. Well, this is what happens when you have to roll with a backup quarterback.
No, I don't want to hear that.
It doesn't. You had plenty of time to fix that position.
That's right.
And you did nothing. So now this is what we have.
You knew that Watson was going to be suspended. You didn't know how many games, but you knew he was going to be suspended.
This is always the easy test. Just ask yourself, what if the Steelers had Nick Chubb? What if the Patriots had Kareem Hunt?
Well, to your point, look how they use Najee Harris, who's not the talent that Nick Chubb is. Mm-hmm. He's a good back.
People think he is because his numbers are so big because they use him.
They use him. So now, to be fair, they don't have Kareem Hunt on their roster.
No, but they've got a bad offensive line, too.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't think that you could put up those kind of numbers. McNuggets, you said you wanted to take care of some business, and we've just been droning on in here.
We're droning on about great stuff.
You want to do a read here?
Yeah, we got to talk about PCC and what the internet says. We actually get back to this. I think it's a very interesting conversation we are in the middle of, so we'll get back to that in a sec as we wait for Aditi. But we talked roster cuts. It is roster day, and we asked the internet some questions about our favorites at PCC Air Force and who's going to get cut. But before we tell you what they said, let's tell you who PCC is.
Oh, tell me about this.
Yeah,
tell me about this company.
What do you say, Polk?
Tell me about this company. I want to hear about it.
Yeah, everyone does. It's the hottest company in Northeast Ohio, and they're hiring. So if you're looking for a job with career advancement and great benefits, PCC Airfoils is a leading manufacturer in Northeast Ohio. All locations of PCC Airfoils in Eastlake, Mentor, Wickliffe, and Minerva are hiring for positions starting at $18 and up.
That's
18.
exciting.
Plus, get full benefit packages, paid time off, and a signing bonus apply online at precast.com/careers to learn more.
Hello. Is it PCC you're looking for?
Can't go wrong with Lionel.
That song?
Can't go wrong with Lionel Richie.
By the way, that was a strange video. I saw that for the first time about 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Was that the Commodores or was that Lionel Richie?
Lionel Richie.
Where someone's making a bust of his face.
Yeah, it's
it is very creepy.
He was dating this blind woman, and she
had
real creepy videos. Have you ever seen the one for with Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney, Say?
Oh,
that one's real. He's like dressed like a farm boy.
You really want to see something all-time bizarre? Maybe we can call it up.
Yeah.
Carl Lewis did a music video.
Oh, no.
And I'm not kidding you guys. If you can call this up, it would make your day.
Oh, boy.
He's in a hot tub with a woman about 70 years old. And he's kind of macking on her.
Wow.
And at the end, they go into a hot tub, and like I think at the very end, they turn a sign that says "Do not disturb."
Wow.
And Carl Lewis was like in the height of his prime back then.
Right.
If you remember, Carl thought he could sing. Remember when he sang the national anthem?
That was brutal.
And Charlie Steiner, who I've always thought you reminded me of Charlie Steiner.
Love Charlie
Steiner. Steiner lost his mind on Sports Center when he played it.
By the way, I once sang the national anthem in a minor league baseball game.
You did
nice.
It was the third worst rendition ever, behind Carl Lewis and Roseanne.
Did you?
Yeah, Roseanne.
But you were trying. You were being sincere.
I was being sincere. I was convinced by a couple of players on the team that I was a good singer.
Oh, dude, they played you so hard.
Oh, they did. Yeah. But I manned up and I did it. I actually, because I'm good in karaoke with a couple of songs.
Are you really?
Or I was 30 years ago.
Okay.
You know.
Did people get upset? Did they think you were mocking?
No, I actually got cheered.
Like, my father fought in Vietnam.
No. I didn't.
That was the next
I was just off key. I was just off key.
McNuggets, can you Google that Carl Lewis music video? And it'd have to be on, like...
And I know you have a recording.
I'll look into it.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you.
But
it is worth the watch.
I do have a recording of my wife singing the national anthem. My wife is a very good singer.
Oh, she
sang the national anthem in a Newark Bears game, and she was excellent.
Wow.
Nice. Unlike me, she did a great job.
Family. Yes. Talent in the family.
Well, her grandmother was a professional singer, but she's got a good voice. Yeah.
All right. So where are we going then? We're going to show the internet response to?
Yeah, we are going to show the internet response. Let's take
Okay.
tag board here first, Steve. This is the question we asked to the internet yesterday. Who is one player on the Browns the internet would be shocked if they got cut, but you wouldn't be surprised? So kind of our conversation in the group chat yesterday. Who may not be on the 53-man roster, who will be or who won't be moving forward? And we got a couple interesting answers here. The internet got a little creative. Let's go to the first one here, Anthony. Speaking of Anthony, DeAnthony Bell, who I think Mary Kay said should be in good shape, but has not been confirmed.
Would that be
one way or
surprising if
another yet.
DeAnthony Bell didn't make the team?
It would ruin my fantasy.
No, they
league.
are high on him, and he's shown flat. He's going to make the practice squad. They're not going to let him out there.
Okay.
It's between him and Richard LeCount. I think DeAnthony Bell.
I know, but that's not he's not a lock for the roster.
Here's who would be a shock to me.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to happen, but it should. Anthony Schwartz.
Yeah, like
He was the most popular answer, by the way.
Or even Greedy Williams, I think, to some degree.
Greedy Williams would shock some people, but man, guys, between not being able to stay on the field and what we saw Saturday night.
Oh, and Emerson.
And Emerson's play, for another day before we kick off the season, we got to drill down on Andrew Berry's draft picks. Because there are some guys in there. Schwartz, DPJ, I think Greedy Williams might be one of those guys.
I think Greedy was before him.
No, I
don't. Draft Greedy?
I don't.
I thought he got drafted. I thought Greedy was drafted the year before
Dorsey?
him. I think.
I could be wrong on that.
All of the Browns' best players, just skim over the roster, have been brought in by Dorsey.
Yeah, it's interesting.
All of them. Even the free agent ones.
No, you don't like to hear that.
All right, so Wyatt
with the exception
Teller,
of Deshaun
Myles
Watson.
Garrett.
Yes, but he
we don't have
Greg Newsome was brought in by Berry.
He's a starter.
JOK brought in by Berry.
Yeah.
Jadeveon Clowney brought in by Berry.
Younger guys,
free agent.
Uh-huh.
Conklin?
No.
Okay.
Dorsey.
Oh, Jedrick Wills was brought in by Berry.
Yep. But
is that his first draft pick?
Yes.
So
I don't think we're putting Jedrick Wills in the he's definitely made it category.
That's true.
Yet.
So you got Teller, you got Batonio, right?
Bitonio was before.
Yeah, way before. Bitonio, I don't think it was Dorsey.
Yeah.
Was that
been there forever?
Dang, that was
I don't even remember who drafted him. But
yeah,
they've had so many different guys drafting guys.
Good, great, but he did bring in.
It's worth the conversation.
Sure.
One day before
I
the
think
season
this
kicks,
year's guys.
we should put all of his draft picks on a full screen.
Yeah.
And just say,
I think this
what are we
year is
grading
too
him?
early to say. I think
way too early to say. You can't tell.
Played, but
you can't tell.
But we can look
I will
at
say,
the first
Perrion
2 years.
Winfrey, and I hate to say this because, and I like your thought on this. Yesterday we were killing Austin Corbett, and Joe Thomas made the point, which was astute. That might be the biggest learning curve of any position in the NFL.
Right.
Running back, you're running off instinct.
Right,
it is what it is. Wide receiver, all that. But he's right about the offensive line. It just takes some players time.
Some guys take longer.
What about the defensive front? Is that seems more reactionary too? It seems like you either got it or you don't.
If you don't, defensive tackles, day one if they're going to be good. Because there's certain things you can't really teach a defensive lineman, right? There's like, and we talk about Warren Sapp all the time. It's about the feel of it, right? Great defensive tackles can rush the passer and they can stop the run.
Yes.
And they seem to know which one is coming.
They can read it right now.
Play action is devastating because defensive linemen don't get to their pass rush.
Right.
They don't transition. They still think it's run, and your quarterback's sitting back there all day. I just don't see, and I've been looking for it. I've been trying to figure out one thing that they have in the middle that they do well, right? At least with some defensive tackles, they can get upfield. I'm not even seeing that level of penetration.
Nobody has stood out at all.
Nobody has.
But Mike, you have other fan
We do. We have two more.
Go ahead.
And Mary Kay alluded to this, that it's not going to happen, but we asked who would you be surprised if they got cut? Dearnest Johnson. It sounds like they're going to keep all 4, if not 5.
Again,
I'd be blown away if they cut Dearnest Johnson.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I'd be blown away.
I thought we were all talking about he wasn't going to be on the team. So, I don't want to cut him, but I wouldn't have been shocked if he was.
No, if they do anything, they would trade him.
Yeah, but you can't trade. I mean, Sony Michel got cut. He's more accomplished back than
maybe more accomplished, but not better. I would take Dearnest Johnson over Sony Michel right now every day.
Sony Michel had a good year last year.
What about hanging on to him in case somebody gets injured? And
I wouldn't cut him at all, but I don't think it would be shocking. To me, it wouldn't be shocking if they cut him.
How do I keep him?
I don't think you could trade Dearness.
Yeah.
That'd be a novel thought. Keep them and use them, right? If I got Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb playing 75% of the snaps, they need a break.
Well, and you could, if you use Kareem Hunt, as you and I have talked about, in multiple varieties, then really Dearnest could be your number two back, essentially, behind
And you got Ford.
And then you spot in the other guys. I mean,
and Felton.
If you're creative, you can't have enough good, talented players no matter what position
I
they
do
play.
think that they're taking calls. They're thinking about how that running back room is going to look and how they can strengthen other parts of their team by using as leverage strength that they have in other areas.
I just don't think – I like Dearnest, but I don't think he has trade value. I don't see anybody giving up anything to get him.
Well, then I hope they keep him.
Yeah,
I'd be stunned if they outright released him.
We're just the same people that say
I think
they just don't involve Kareem Hunt enough, and then we're like, but we also need to find touches for Felton and Ford and this new kid. So I just don't know where they all come from.
This is very.
I think Johnson's great though.
This is kind of off to the side, but I'm just laughing, and I'm telling y'all this: the same way that Odell Beckham Jr. went off and did his thing, and it looked horrible on Baker, and he couldn't escape it. Mm-hmm. If Baker come out and he's throwing the ball and people wide open and he's not doing play action, he's in the shotgun doing all kind of stuff, throwing the rock, that's going to look horrible on Stefanski.
It absolutely
It's going to be directly proportionate on him.
That shouldn't be based on one game. It's got to be based on a season. But if he does it over a season. Because if you remember, and most people won't, after 2 weeks last year, Sam Darnold had like the best stats in the NFL.
Yes.
And then he did nothing the rest of the year.
If it's over a season.
But if he does that over a season, he looks like a star.
What do you point to?
Yeah, then you point to Stefanski.
Do you think Sam Darnold during that exchange when Baker and Cynthia had that exchange was like behind them yelling, "I'd F him up too. I'd totally F him up too. Give Sam Darnold a chance. Put me in."
He's hurt now though.
Yeah, he is hurt. It sounds like it's pretty. There's nothing worse than a high ankle sprain.
Oh yeah,
Mike, you got one more, right?
Rough.
We do. Chase Winovich. Let's take it full. He's a guy they brought in this offseason with high hopes.
He can't get on the field.
Hasn't played.
Yeah.
I don't care if he gets cut or not.
Really? Is he that? I mean, I know people kind of excited when he came here. I didn't know enough about him to be excited.
Because the number he picked and it's his hair.
And that's really what it was?
Is there anything more Cleveland than the hair and the number he picked?
And if Bill Belichick liked him and he was on the team there, then guess what?
Yeah.
He must be good.
But then Bill Belichick was willing to let him go.
Right. Bill liked him, and somehow he worked his way into Bill's doghouse.
Yeah, that's not great.
That's crazy, right?
And that would be through poor play.
One of the things, though, that you got to respect Bill on is when he's made up his mind on a player, He doesn't.
Right, he doesn't care.
I don't care where we draft.
Didn't he cut a guy on Christmas Day?
He has.
And he certainly doesn't care what anybody else thinks about it.
Now, he did. The guy that played for the Browns, he let him go because he wanted more money for a third-round pick. He started here at middle linebacker. Jamie Collins.
Mm-hmm. Jamie Collins.
He said, no, we're not going to give you no money. Go to Cleveland. Mm-hmm. Then he was like, we'll bring you back to New England for less money. So he brought him back for less money, and he wanted the bag. He was like, no, we'll bring you back for less than we were paying you 2 years ago.
Yeah, he's pretty good at this, Belichick, it turns out.
Yeah, he's done it a time or two.
Yeah.
Is guys, on the horn yet? No.
Aditi's still on a call.
All right, before
we got two options.
Well, I got something here, Mikey.
Shoot.
I just want to look something up real quick. Okay, so I wonder what you guys think about this. To me, this game against the Carolina Panthers. We've talked a lot about Baker. We've talked a lot about Stefanski. But to me, this game is not a referendum on Baker, and it's not a referendum on Stefanski. It's a referendum on Myles freaking Garrett. He needs to, first of all, the Panthers' left tackle is a rookie. Okay?
Delicious.
He's a rookie. They have an offensive line that was bad last year. They've kind of pieced it together. They drafted a kid. They brought in Austin Corbett. Myles Garrett, whether it's the left tackle who's a rookie or I can't even think who their right tackle is off the top of my head, but it's not a proven guy. He needs to go, and plus with what Baker said, and I don't care, I'm not ripping Baker for what he said because I don't think it's that big a deal. But, if you're Myles Garrett, you should take that personally. And you should use it as motivation if you didn't have enough already.
Can I tell you what Bull's doing right now?
Just setting that up.
What?
He's setting the trap.
Yeah, that trap coming.
Myles Garrett, you better play. Myles Garrett, you better break him in half. So, and here's why I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
He is going to have to play well.
He's got to kick some ass.
To me, if there's there's two players on this team that there will be no referendum on. Myles Garrett and Nick Chubb.
No.
They need to prove nothing to me.
Yes, they do, because Myles Garrett, in my opinion,
is only as good as his next game.
Myles Garrett's a great player.
Wonderful.
But Myles Garrett should be an all-time great player. And to this point in his career, he's not an all-time great player. He's just a great player.
I had this conversation with a buddy about a week ago.
Yes.
Hall of Famer right now?
No.
Trajectory?
Definitely
For me,
not.
is.
Oh, trajectory?
Trajectory. Obviously, if he retired today, no.
Yeah, right.
I'm just saying trajectory.
I think.
Have you seen enough from Myles Garrett to say that if he can sustain this for a couple of more years?
Yeah. I think he's borderline. And he shouldn't be borderline for me. Now, maybe I got it wrong. I don't know.
What do you guys think?
As a defensive lineman, we did a blog on Locked On Browns podcast. I said, look, if he ends up today, he's probably a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And the reason is there's precedent. You got Terrell Davis, who had a very short period of time. You have Gale Sayers, very short period of time.
Now, they were at positions
with more stats.
The lifeline of those players is 3.5 years on average.
Now, the thing, if you look at it, all it takes is a defensive player of the year, and he's in.
But he hasn't won that.
He hasn't won it.
And he should have by now.
He is the caliber of player who should have one by now.
Yes, and it's splitting hairs to some degree. I guess what I'm saying is I think Myles Garrett should be a 10, and he plays like a 9.7, which is ridiculous because 9.7 is better than almost every other player.
You're saying he's got more potential.
I think there's another level, and I don't know if it's he's too nice.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if he just
and
I don't know what it is.
Problem. Does he have a motor problem? Because when I watch TJ Watt,
he's inconsistent.
The big conversation is Watt or Garrett. And it's really tough for me.
Yeah.
Especially when we showed the picture a while ago with Garrett with his shirt off on the response to the Baker Mayfield thing. Yeah. And you're like, this guy's a superhero. He should be playing football. Mm-hmm. He should be making movies.
Yeah.
When you see that, you're like, he should have 100 sacks a year.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then I watch TJ Watt, who physically is not as gifted.
Doesn't look like that.
But his motor is running at high RPMs on every single play.
I'm gonna tell you. Let me give y'all this.
He's had better talent around him.
This is what I feel. Myles Garrett just now, right, is just getting that swag back, right? Let me explain. When the helmet incident happened, we had a bunch of people. Like, he got to go to anger management. He almost killed somebody. Oh, my gosh. Like,
I wasn't saying anything.
Like, well, there's a lot.
Some people said throw him out of the league forever.
Throw him out of the league. When that happens, and then you remember, he had been getting a lot of penalties. They were giving him penalties for
he had a lot of
bad penalties.
By the way, Aaron Donald got a total pass because it happened in practice. Which
for me, I think after that, he's still been dominant. He's still been a guy. But now what it takes is a little bit of time to get that edge back. You have to play defense. If you go watch any of the great defensive players, John Randall, you go watch Lawrence Taylor, these dudes are out there and they have bad intentions. You got to
play.
We don't care. You got to have that in your mindset.
I think the one knock on him is that there are times where I have to look and say, is he on the field?
Yeah.
I should never have to wonder, is he on the field?
Aaron Donald makes big plays in big moments all the time.
Well, they won the Super Bowl because of Aaron Donald.
100%.
The last 2 or 3 plays he made won the Super Bowl.
He doesn't get the ball on that last play. They probably throw a touchdown.
I agree.
But I agree.
Myles Garrett's got to be more consistent in those big moments.
I think Myles is on it this year because guess what he says? I'm the best.
Yeah.
Now, in fairness, when you compare a guy to Aaron Donald, you are comparing a guy to the highest bar possible.
But that's my bar for Myles Garrett.
I don't
think
even
that's unfair.
mean in the game today.
Period.
What Aaron Donald has done, I think most everybody that studies this for a living will agree, he did it better than anyone ever did.
I think that should be the bar for Myles Garrett, for me.
Wow.
I think it should be.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Lofty expectations.
Aditi is with us now, and she can settle this. And I agree with Adam, Aditi, that there's a special motivation for Myles Garrett in this first game against Carolina. We're trying to make a big thing out of the comments from Baker and trying to whoop everybody into like a fury over that. But do you think Myles Garrett can draw from this, and this is his time to shine? And it's sort of his team right now, if you think about it. I mean,
I think he needs to dominate this game.
What do you think, Aditi?
I think he needs to dominate the game for many, many, many reasons. I think to Adam's point, he's not. And it's funny, Adam, that you were saying that, because don't you remember, isn't that the conversation that my husband Matt had with you at your house about Myles Garrett and how, like, mellow he seemed off the field and all these varied interests. And I think that the phrasing that Matt actually used, Matt, my husband, was like, you would think that his testosterone is always here. And he was actually just like a regular guy to talk to.
Right.
So, but the switch, it's about the switch, right? It's about like what you turn on when you're on the field. And I said this on the radio this morning. I just think that Myles Garrett is a little bit more careful, a little more cagey, a little smarter about what he will publicly say. So we're not going to hear him sit here and say, oh, yeah, I want to take it to Baker. Or, oh, yeah, I want to have 4 sacks in this game. But you're lying to yourself if you don't think that that's what's churning underneath him.
No, yeah,
I also think it really bothers him that TJ Watt was Defensive Player of the Year and that he wasn't. I think he really, truly believes that he is the guy that should be dominating this league.
That's right.
And why do we all talk about Aaron Donald in a different way when we talk about him? And Myles doesn't necessarily say it publicly, but I'll take you back 2 years ago when Aaron Donald was named Defensive Player of the Year. TJ Watt had no problem right away saying, okay, motivation for next year. And so isn't that what you want Myles Garrett to say?
Absolutely.
I will throw this out there.
Yeah.
I'm not old enough to answer this, but is Aaron Donald really more dominant than LT was?
He is in my book. It's a different game. Now, LT changed the sport. LT was quick, and LT was a linebacker who could put his hand in the dirt and could come after quarterbacks on the edge. But I just think at that position, for me, just an opinion, I watched a team win a Super Bowl last year because of plays he made in the clutch. And that, to me, is my definition of all-time great.
I mean, when you're debating LT versus Aaron Donald, it's position so close.
What I do is I like to put them, I say the defensive tackle positions inside because it's different.
Right, yeah.
Outside 5 technique. And then Lawrence Taylor was more of an outside linebacker, stand-up rusher.
He was.
So you can parse, but as far as being dominant, he's right up there with LT as being one of the guys.
But I'm also, guys, for me, like to my feeling on this is, do you make everybody around you better? Because the game of football is the ultimate team sport. You are only as strong as your weakest link. It is about the puzzle pieces fitting together. And I'll take you back to last year. I remember having a conversation with Raheem Morris, who of course is the Rams defensive coordinator. And Raheem said that it's not just what you see on the field with Aaron Donald. It's that every Tuesday, every off day, Aaron Donald is in the building. It's that Aaron Donald is walking into everybody's meeting room to just go and sit and talk to them the same way that Cooper Kupp does that. He's talking about the way that Aaron Donald will rep that he can do in his sleep 52 times. And it's all the younger guys watching the best player on the team work that way and how it forces them to then work that way. And so there's more to it, which is why you sit here and it's like, yeah, okay, if I'm starting a team, I want Aaron Donald. Done.
Yeah, I think that's a great distinction. And I'll cross over to baseball for a second. But when Jose Ramirez is the team's best player, he also plays harder than everybody.
That's true.
There's a rub-off on 23 guys.
No
that
doubt.
watch that every single young guys in particular. So
you see your star busting his ass on every play, you're going to do it too.
You are. And I know that there's a knock.
How do you not?
Yeah.
No, he's not. And one of the knocks against Myles is that, and I don't know that people should kill him for this. Is well, he's not a leader. He's not a vocal rah-rah guy. I don't know where you guys stand on that, but this is football.
Yeah.
And I do want my best player to be that rah-rah guy. And I know you can't just say I'm going to be a leader because I'm supposed to be. But leaders are born.
I think he is a leader in a different type of way. Aditi, you would know better than me. But I remember last year, Myles Garrett called out the entire defense.
I love that.
You remember that? I can't even
when
remember what game it was.
I loved when he
called out the defense and we got to get to the quarterback more, blah, blah, blah. And that next game, he dominated.
Yep,
he had a monster game, and I can't even remember what game it is now.
It was
but
later
I remember him talking.
Later in the season.
Yes, and I remember him dominating and leading the way. And I felt like the whole team, if you could call out your teammates.
I want more of that.
Right, that shows me leadership. But I've been saying, Aditi, that I think as great as Myles Garrett's been, I still think there's another level, and I think he should be held to, as great as Aaron Donald is, I think he should be held to the highest possible standard, and I think he needs a little more consistency in the big moments. That's it. I mean, he's great.
And I don't think that there's anything wrong in saying that.
Yeah,
if Myles Garrett wants to end up in the Hall of Fame, if Myles Garrett wants to go down in history as the best defensive player ever, well, then, he's got to hit another level.
100%.
And it has nothing to do with public perception. It's exactly what you're saying. It's week in, week out, forcing teams to change what they're doing. Right. And it's being dominant to that point, and it's backing up your words. It's all of that. But I also think that Myles Garrett is poised for that in a lot of ways. Yeah. And what's wrong with expectations? Nothing. What's wrong with holding someone to a standard and saying, you know what, you've been this good, but we want to see you be this good now. And then we want to see you be this good. That's the reality of being the best at something.
Couldn't agree more. Hey, Aditi, we're talking cuts throughout the show, and there are reports out there of what the roster is going to look like. I'm sure you've seen them. Any surprises for you, or do you think there's still a move coming that might surprise fans?
Potentially, but I don't know. I think that right now this is still so fluid. We sit here and we look at today and what happens by 4 p.m. today, but every team is cutting 30 players. So there can still be a whole bunch of maneuvering. There can be guys who jump on a practice squad. There could be somebody tomorrow who gets hurt. So what happens, what you see today at, let's call it 4:15 p.m. is not necessarily what you're going to see week 1 down at Carolina. I wouldn't read too much into any of it. I would just say on a personal level, I hate today. Like I really, really, really do.
Yeah, we started the show
I think
on
that it's
note.
important for every single one of us to just remember that there are so many politics involved in all of this as well. Were you drafted by this regime? Were you not? What number of guys at this position do you need to keep? Sometimes you can be so much better than 3 guys who are on the roster, but you're older or you cost more or somebody isn't standing on the table for you. So what happens today is not necessarily a statement on who you are, and that translates into a million different professions. Jay, you and I can happily speak to that as well.
Yes, we can.
Just
it's
try
real.
To remember and have some heart.
And that's how I started the show, Aditi, with that exact message. You know, we kind of salivate over this day in the media because it gives us a lot to talk about, but a third of the league essentially will watch their dream end today, and that's tough. There's a human element to that I always try to remind. And to your point about the politics involved, I ask myself all the time. So Mike Harley comes in here. He was undrafted, right? They signed him as a free agent. I loved what I saw from this kid. And you know what? If Harley wore Schwartz's jersey in the preseason and Schwartz wore Harley's jersey in the preseason, in a vacuum, that's an easy decision. Harley, he just passed the look test. He was better, but he's not on this team because he wasn't a draft pick. And we know how GMs love to hold tightly to their draft picks because they've got to prove that this guy can turn it around. And it drives me nuts.
Well, and some of it, you could say the same thing about Baldwin as well. Harley and Baldwin.
Absolutely.
But part of it also is maneuvering. Who's more likely to be able to be brought back onto a practice squad? You know, let's take John Kelly and Jerome Ford. Those were 2 really good young running backs. if you cut Jerome Ford, he's getting picked up by somebody else.
In a second.
But maybe John Kelly isn't. Same way, if you cut Shorts, somebody might sit here and say, well, this guy has elite world-class speed. We're going to take a chance on him. You might have an easier chance sneaking Baldwin or Hurley back onto your practice squad and keeping them within your organization.
Very true.
Sometimes it's about the maneuvering of that as well.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you made that point because you're absolutely right. And there are guys that are going to be released that will be on either this team or will be on the teams that release them tomorrow or 2 days from now. It's just you got to let the dust settle and follow the moves.
Didi, I'm going to talk about this. Your boy Josh Dobbs, I like him. If you have a situation where Jacoby Brissett does not play well, do you think they have the confidence to, give Josh Dobbs an opportunity to come in and play? Because Jimmy G is off the board. That ship has sailed.
No. I think Josh is there to be the backup quarterback. He is sort of the security if, heaven forbid, something happens to Jacoby Brissett. I think fans that are sitting here saying, oh, Josh Dobbs played better than Jacoby Brissett, nothing happens in a vacuum. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But I will say this. It's funny because I was on the sideline Sunday at the Steelers game, and I talked about this with Mike Sullivan, the Steelers quarterbacks coach. I talked about it with multiple people on the Steelers staff. I talked about it with several Steelers players. Everybody loves Josh Dobbs. I mean, they really do. It is so hard not to root for this guy. And I was telling Mike Sullivan how you see, whether it's Jacoby Brissett or Deshaun Watson coming off the sideline, immediately sitting down next to Josh Dobbs and kind of looking at the tablet with him. And Mike Sullivan, the Steelers quarterbacks coach, who of course was the quarterbacks coach of the Giants all those years ago with Eli Manning and won a Super Bowl, obviously. He was saying that's how Ben Roethlisberger was, that Ben Roethlisberger trusted Josh Dobbs' eyes more than anybody else, that even though Mason Rudolph was the number 2, Ben would come off and want to talk to Josh. What did you see? What do you think there?
In fairness, no one wants to talk to Mason Rudolph.
Please call him the Great Gazoo. That's his appropriate name.
He's not trading him unless he gets a ton of something back in return. But
Ben,
I'm so happy for Josh because Josh hasn't been lights out on the practice field. You watch him on the practice field and you're like, what is going on? But when the lights come on in the stadium, he's certainly done what you wanted him to do. He's created a level of energy that's infectious on the sideline. I mean, when he dove over that pylon, the way that sideline erupted, I just, it's fun. And again, to the point, Jay, that we were making about let's remember that the guys that cut are human beings who have families and you feel for them. Sometimes there are guys like Josh that you just can't help but get excited and pleased for a young man like that and for his family, for his mom and dad.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Do you think we might see, Mike, do you think we might see a trade? If you had to bet, the Browns make a trade for a defensive tackle, do they make a trade for a wide receiver? Do you think they do something, even if it's small? Do you see them doing something in the next 24 hours or so?
I mean, I think it's always possible, but I don't know that I'm sitting on the edge of my seat as in, oh my gosh, here it's about to come. I think there's hope for those young defensive tackles. I mean, they're young, they're hungry, they're physical. And I appreciate that piece of them. I think that some of them need some reps and need some consistency. I think Perrion Winfrey, for example, is a guy that's got a lot of dog in him. And I love the way that he's going to Gerald McCoy every day and asking for tips and trying to get better. He just needs to get consistent. And a lot of times we need the reps to get there. I mean, my first year on TV, I was horrible.
You were never horrible, Didi.
It took reps to get consistent and get better.
And by the way, I'm going to call myself out. That's actually a stupid question because who the hell would know if they're going to make a trade? I mean, how could you know that? It's all my
Wow, don't beat yourself up for that, man. She hears that.
It's a stupid question. Nobody really knows that. It's a dumb question. People shouldn't ask that.
No. But to be fair, let's say Andrew Berry texts me and says, "Hey, Didi, a trade is coming." You think I'm going to tell you? If you told me,
you know what? We're friends. You should at least text me privately and tell me to keep it under my hat.
First of all, are you telling us here that?
Yeah, that was a flex. Did anyone else pick up on that?
Are you telling us that Andrew Berry would text you and say, "Aditi, we're thinking about making a trade, or we got a trade coming"?
I think she's saying he did. I think she's saying he did.
Come on. We've already had some reporting questions this morning from one of my wonderful, fabulous friends, Cynthia Freeland. I don't want to get into that.
We had her on the show.
She was on with us.
She came on the show with us, right?
Oh, good. Yeah, I was on the phone with her this morning, and she said, Jay, you were texting her.
I was. So I want to ask you, Aditi, because she did change the narrative to me, in that originally when she told the story on the podcast, she had said, go kick their ass or whatever. She bleeped that ass out. And then he had said, I'm going to F them up. When she came on the show with us, she said, when I saw him, I was excited to see him. I told him, go kick some ass. And then she said, I also told them to go F them up. And she said she was referring to the 17 opponents, not specifically the Browns. And then Baker just repeated what she said. I'm going to F them up. To me, that changes really the bones of the story. Does it to you?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it of course does. And that's exactly what she said to me on the phone this morning when, I called her because obviously it blew up. And I said this on the radio to our friend Ken Carmen this morning, that I didn't want to put any context on it until I actually talked to Cynthia and found the whole context of the conversation. That's exactly what she said to me, that she was just excited to see him. And she was having kind of a one-off conversation with him, like, hey, I'm pumped for you. Go do this. And I think this is one of those things where, our world has changed a little bit. I have the utmost respect for Cynthia, not just as a friend, but for what she does. Her day-to-day job is as a brilliant statistician and data analyst. Yeah. She works in studios. She's not necessarily a person who every single day is out in the field getting quotes and parsing what quotes do we share and thinking about, okay, what are the repercussions of this? Should I paraphrase this? Should I soften this in some way? And so I think she just got excited and didn't necessarily recognize that this could be twisted or turned or used in a portion. And look, we've all experienced this. I mean, I've experienced this a million times. I've said something and then it's been taken in a right turn, and it was like, wait a minute, that's not how I meant that at all, or that isn't the full context of it. So I think the headline here is, what else do you expect Baker to say? What else do you expect Baker to feel? Whether he says it publicly or not, you better believe that, the guy's not a robot. Of course he wants to take it to his old team. It's what he did at Oklahoma when he faced Texas Tech. And again, even though Myles Garrett is never going to say to us, oh yeah, I want to sack that guy 18 times, you better believe and you better hope that every night when Myles Garrett is going to bed, he's saying, I want to sack that guy 18 times to himself.
The truth is,
it just feels like a non-story in some ways.
The truth is, though, in the end, I don't have a problem with what Baker said. I don't have a problem that Cynthia said, because you made a great point. I don't think any of us looked at it from that angle, that she's not really an on-field reporter. That's not her day job, right? So she's not used to trying to decide what to say and what to say. She thought it was a completely harmless, let's get him type of thing. And she said today with us, she probably shouldn't have said it. That's fine. Everybody should move on. Not a big deal. But it still could be used by the Browns as extra motivation, whatever, bulletin board material. And that's fine. I'm okay with that.
Fine. But again, like, to that point, I sit here and I say, you're a national football player. Okay?
Agreed.
Agreed.
You don't need it, but don't guys
really
do that?
Need some words to get jacked up.
So what, I think I'll try harder now, Bull?
No, but don't. Then why do we say all the time that guys don't care about that guys care about bulletin board material? It's brought up all the time. I'm not the first person to bring it up.
Stories because we love going.
So you don't think that factors in at all, G? Do you think that factors in at all?
I told y'all how I felt, man.
It's a little different.
A lot of times, this story to me it happens like. She comes out, she's like, yo, that's my man. Like, this is what I get frustrated. Hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
What I'm frustrated about, what she's frustrated about is she's like, that's my guy.
Yeah.
At what point can I say that's my guy and I want to see him do good?
Yeah.
It ain't no story.
No, but I think what Bull's asking you about, and this is I think what Aditi's drilling down on.
Is there really such a thing as bulletin
board?
They
were going to try 99.7 and now they're going to try 99.9.
We've talked about this a million times. Should we never talk about it again? Is it not true?
What I'm saying to you is, as you come full circle, what she said has no bearing on how Myles Garrett or anybody else is going to go hard. They already know what it is. And you think people don't like Baker in the locker room, and Baker don't like them. Let's get it.
So I'm never talking about bulletin board material. If it has no meaning,
No, but you know what? Guys, I think this is such for people who care, it's such an interesting little insight into sort of like how the sausage is made, how we do our jobs, whether I share what Andrew Berry says to me or not.
Yeah.
What piece of what Kevin Stefanski says do I share? And I'll give you a perfect example. It's CBS. So I'll be a sideline reporter at this game, at this Panthers-Browns game.
Right.
And the rules have been laid out for me. I'm standing on the sideline. I am right behind or next to the Panthers bench. If Baker Mayfield comes off the field, let's say that his O-line lets up 3 sacks in a row, okay? Let's say that happens. And Baker comes to the line, and he screams at his linemen, and he says, guys, we got to clean this up. We have to whatever. I'm not allowed to go on camera and say, Baker said X.
I didn't know that.
But you could text me.
No, I'm allowed to sit here and say, a very demonstrative
He was
Baker
emotional.
Mayfield came to the sideline. He gathered his offensive linemen. He was fired up. He had some words for them. But I am technically, in exchange for being allowed to be on the sideline, I'm not allowed to repeat exactly what his words were.
And that's not just a CBS thing. That's league-wide.
Will you secretly text me and give me the information, Aditi? Will you?
No, she will not.
Every time I don't think the NFL can be more dictatorial, though. They're just like, if
by
you
the
hear
way,
anything bad, you're not allowed to talk about it.
But however, we've talked about this
access,
before.
I get it.
It's the trade-off for the access. So it's Aditi's job
Yeah.
to set the tone on the Panthers bench. She can't eavesdrop on a conversation, and I'm not even saying in that case it would have been eavesdropping. If he shouts it, she hears it.
Right.
But what she's not allowed to do is then say, Baker just said, and then repeat a quote.
Yeah, right.
You're just not allowed to do that. And in part, this is because of the relationship between the league and the networks that cover it. It's all one piece.
Right.
And there are rules of engagement that the players will not tolerate being broken.
True.
And that's one of them.
I'm curious,
and also, Jay, they need to have, look, this is their work environment. And
Right.
so they need to have faith and trust that part of their work environment is sacred or not for public consumption. I'll give you another example. This was a moment on the sideline, and I actually used it in the broadcast on Saturday that I found very jarring. We talked about Anthony Schwartz earlier. So even after all the drops, there was that pick where Anthony Schwartz, that interception, Jacoby Brissett was intercepted, and it was kind of like Anthony Schwartz got picked off and fell down, and that led to the interception. So I'm behind the Browns bench, and eventually I see Anthony Schwartz walk over to Jacoby Brissett, and he essentially apologizes. I don't know what his exact words were, but we're kind of like, that was on me, my bad. And then Deshaun Watson pulled Anthony Schwartz aside. And I saw Deshaun Watson take at least 3 or 4 minutes and kind of explain to Schwartz what he could have done better, how he should have handled that, the way that he should have moved his body. I thought it was really notable. I thought it was a show of how both of these quarterbacks are taking ownership of this team, how both of these quarterbacks are leading this team, how Deshaun Watson, even though he's going to be gone, actually starting today, he still wants to be involved in the growth and development of this team. But I did not tell you exactly what Deshaun Watson said to Anthony Schwartz. So it's my job to paint the picture and tell you that bigger story. But I can't tell you what Deshaun said.
I'm curious, if you heard somebody on the sideline admit to cheating, say something racist, say something homophobic, I don't know, something like way over the line in any of those things, what would you do?
Tuck that.
You can't do anything?
I don't know. I haven't been in that position yet, so thank goodness I haven't been in that position. But I have certainly, I will say this, in the course of my being a reporter, just standing in a locker room or talking to people, I have most definitely heard inappropriate off-color things.
Sure.
And not done anything with them because, again, it's someone's workplace. You know, there are certain things that I believe are not meant for public consumption. I mean, Adam, you and I have done it. We've had private conversations where we've said things and I've said, please don't share that this is what I'm saying about, you know, whoever it may be about. And let me make clear, neither Adam nor I have said anything racist or sexist or homophobic when saying these things.
Wouldn't tell us if you did, apparently.
There are conversations that we have about personal feelings that you don't necessarily want shared.
I'll share a quick story about how players view that space. So it's the locker room. In baseball, it's the dugout. In football, it's the sidelines. You may remember in the mid-'90s when the Indians were a powerhouse, I was standing 2 feet from it. I watched the whole thing go down. Hannah Storm, who later became a co-host with me, was getting ready to interview Kenny Lofton before one of the preseason games, and she had set up in the dugout, and she was actually sitting on the back high of the dugout, which is where the players a lot of times will sit. She was waiting for Kenny Lofton to come. The NBC camera was set up. The producer was there. Albert Bell comes in from taking infield, outfield, and he sees her sitting there and erupts and drops F-bombs. Get out of my dugout. This is my office. This is my space. In general, I think, Aditi, you might co-sign this. Players are uncomfortable with people in their space in general, just as we would be uncomfortable. Imagine if there were 3 reporters sitting in those empty chairs right now, reporting on what we do. I mean, we might tolerate it and treat them like human beings.
Probably better than Albert Bell would.
Yeah, now Albert Bell was an idiot.
I don't know if we should use him as an example.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is there were a lot of players that went up to Albert and said, that's our space.
I think
so.
I think that's a ridiculous reaction by Albert Bell.
No, but I
was standing right there.
I think that there are some rules. Jay, you tell this story, and I'm remembering being, 23 years old in the Mets clubhouse, and Cliff Floyd. It was a long rain delay before a game. Cliff Floyd pulled up one of those stools. The guys all had stools in front of their locker, and he and I were having a conversation, and it wasn't like an interview. I think we were actually talking about whether he refrigerates red wine, of all things, the things that I remember in my head. Anyway, we were talking about how he likes his red wine chilled, and he pulled up a stool and said, sit down. So here I am, I'm 23 or 24 years old. I was probably wearing sandals and a dress. He was thinking, we've been standing here forever. We're having a conversation. Let me be polite, pull up a stool. I sat down on the stool. I was later taken to task by several veteran male reporters who said, you don't do that. You do not get to be comfortable. It is their space. They are allowing us in there to do our jobs, but don't act like you belong there on a regular basis.
But he invited you to sit down.
He did, thinking, well, if the player pulled the stool out for me, what am I supposed to do? I never sat on a stool again.
Yeah, no, she's right. There are these unwritten rules of engagement between journalist and player. There are a lot of lines, and Aditi, I'm sure you've seen reporters cross those lines, and it's tough to know what the rules are and where the lines are because they're constantly moving, but I can see how there would be players. Where I thought you were going was a player may have come up to you and said, what are you doing sitting on one of our stools? These are for us. And I didn't even think you were going to go the reporter route.
I was lucky that clubhouse, I was very lucky that clubhouse was, they were great, actually. And that's what's so funny. This is another random segue, but like when people think you're a fan of somebody, I grew up a Yankees fan, and I loved being in that Mets clubhouse. Like Julio Franco was 50 years old in there and was fantastic, and Pedro Martinez and Bobby Wagner, and, as a young writer, these guys were fantastic to me. And the Yankees clubhouse was so buttoned up and strict and corporate. It was a totally different thing.
By the way, when I was doing play-by-play in the minor leagues.
Anyway, I don't know why I took that hard left turn. I apologize.
That's all right. It's interesting insight. I think it's fascinating.
When I was doing
play, we're not really fans. We're fans of good people, and we're fans of good stories. That's it.
Aditi, I'll tell my boring story. When I was doing play-by-play in the minor leagues, I sat in the dugout all the time. Nobody said squat to me.
No, because you were part of the team. And
so I'm the play-by-play guy.
Aditi, to that point.
And you were covering like the New Haven crab catchers.
Yeah, but watch. Aditi, when you're in that role, you were just in that role. You're flying on the team plane. They look at you as friendly media. And they embrace you more than you would be embraced. And you do a wonderful job of breaking down people's tensions. So I can't imagine anybody mistreating you or making you not feel comfortable. But I also can't imagine a situation where you'll ever feel as comfortable as you did both with the Steelers, because that was your regular beat, and more particularly with the Browns, because you were behind the enemy line with them, really.
Well, and I do, it's funny that you say that. I wonder about that because, of course, I pride myself on having good relationships. I don't think anybody with the Bengals a year ago or, the Ravens or the Steelers, whoever it is, has ever thought like she's a rabble rouser or she's a weasel, or she's lying, or, and I've told this story before, John Harbaugh is my favorite coach in the league. Sorry, Kevin, but John Harbaugh is my favorite coach in the league. And if I were an NFL player, I'd want to play for John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh didn't talk to me for a year. Like, he was so angry at me for one whole year. And it was because I was reporting things that he openly admitted were completely correct. He just hated that I had this information.
He didn't like hearing them.
He hated that you were good at your job. That's what he hated. And that's an okay reason to hate somebody.
But my point is, I think that in general, most people that I deal with will say that I'm fair. Whether they like it or not, they know that I'm not looking to nitpick. But I did actually wonder, because Saturday night with the Browns was especially fun. I mean, I had this interview with Greg Newsome where I openly teased him about the way he said acclimate. And we just were hysterically laughing. And then I did this interview with John Johnson and Anthony Walker that went completely off the rail. I mean, I'm still laughing. We were laughing so hard doing it. And then, as everybody knows at this point, my first 2 assignments for CBS are as the sideline reporter for the Browns-Panthers telecast and then for the Jets-Browns telecast.
Yes.
Well, I'm working for CBS. I am not working for the Browns. My job in those 2 games will be to report the game down the middle as factually as possible.
And I have no doubt you will.
Jacoby Brissett looks horrible and his teammates go ape on him on the sideline, I'm going to have to report it.
Right.
And I was actually thinking this, Jay, the guys have been so great to me. Does anything change when I'm suddenly not wearing a brown shirt?
No, because they understand that that's your job.
They're smart enough to recognize what the job is.
You know what? The people that you want to understand that will understand that. That's
just
your
don't
job.
sit on a stool when you're working for CBS. Don't sit on that stool.
Stools are for clothes.
Do not sit on that stool.
And Aditi, I bet you if John Harbaugh was on with us right now, I'm pretty confident he would tell me that you're terrific at your job and probably that you're one of his favorites too. But that's how John has to be in that role. And he's doing what he has to do.
I love that you're complimenting her on behalf of other people now.
He got it down to a T, don't he?
I think he'd say he loves your hair.
I
think he'd say he likes that top.
Man, boy, I tell you what.
You know John. Am I off base on that assumption? Because that's who John is.
No, you know what? And this is why I said I'd want to play for him. I'll tell you this: when I left the NFL Network, one of the nicest, best, most encouraging messages that I got was from John Harbaugh.
See you there?
And he has indeed checked in a couple of times. Hey, how are you doing? What's going on? And I'm sorry to say it in Cleveland, and I'm sure they don't want to hear it, but the Ravens organization, I just think top to bottom is so tremendous.
It is the blueprint.
Huge
we hate it. You're right. We agree.
Harbaugh.
We hate it.
I hope they enjoy third place this year.
I'm going to tell a quick story before we say goodbye on John Harbaugh. So his parents, Jack, who is a great coach, and his wife, I think Jack's wife is Jackie. They met at Bowling Green. That's where I met my wife. So you're in a club called the Falcon Flames when you meet your spouse there. So laugh if you will. Laugh if you will. But it's really kind of nice. This was 35 years ago. I still get a Valentine's Day card every year from Bowling Green saying Happy Valentine's Day to our Falcon Flames. Anyhow, I was talking to the Harbaughs about this at a World Series game in 2016. We were sharing space. And I said, meeting you guys, they're so lovely. I go, you guys are wonderful people. John is a wonderful, not just coach, but person, human being. And then I paused, and Jack Sr. looked at me like he knew it was coming, and I go, what the hell happened to Jim? And they both laughed, and they both said, we hear that a lot. But it's so true.
Oh my
Jim is
God.
just,
He's
and
a
Jim
handful.
is, Jim's just not like Jack, like John. He's just a different, different guy.
Well, I know you want me to go, but I have to add one more to that. So early in my career, obviously everybody knows I live in Pittsburgh, but I covered the league for the NFL Network. The last few years, I really have honed in on the AFC North. But John Harbaugh was once asking me a question about Mike Tomlin. And I was just like, do you guys just really actually despise each other? Do you hate each other? And he was kind of talking about how pretty much in the league at that time, it's really hard to have best friends who are other NFL head coaches, especially guys you compete against twice a year. And so I'm telling him this story about Andy Reid and Tom Coughlin. Now, there really was just so much mutual respect. And this one year when Andy Reid had Mike Vick and Vince Young, and just the year started really badly, and Tom Coughlin could not stop praising Andy Reid. and Andy Reid actually choking up, hearing what Tom Coughlin had said about him. And so John Harbaugh says, and this at this time, Jim was with the 49ers. John Harbaugh says to me, those are probably the only two guys that would ever actually talk about each other that way and treat each other that way and feel that way about each other. Like, I just don't see that happening with anybody else.
Yeah.
And right. So then I was like, wait a minute. So like, you hate every NFL coach? I was like, what about Jim? Like, you can't even hate Jim, can you? And John looks at me and he goes, sometimes I do.
He's easier to hate than most.
I mean, I just think it's natural, right?
By the way,
right.
remember the movie Grumpy Old Men with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon?
Yeah.
I could picture Andy Reid and Tom Coughlin doing like that movie. Like Tom Coughlin, they're in the winter. Tom Coughlin's cheeks are purple. Andy Reid's wearing his Hawaiian shirt, even though it's negative 50 degrees.
Right.
Like, can't you picture the two of them doing
I think,
this?
I want to see the two of them with a reality show after they're done coaching.
Yeah, that would be good.
After Andy leaves.
I'd watch.
That'd be great.
Thanks,
Aditi. It's not that we want to get rid of you. Trust
It's
me.
1 o'clock.
It's that we're
We gotta
up
go
against
home.
the end of our show.
Yeah.
All
I
right,
would sit
well,
here
I'll
and
see
talk
you
to you
guys
till
later
4
in the
o'clock if you would.
And so would John Harbaugh.
Bye, Aditi.
Don't tell him I said that because I don't want him mad at me again.
That's
Okay.
officially off the record
Off
on
the
the
record.
internet.
I already tweeted it.
See
Bye,
ya.
Aditi.
I'll
Bye,
text you.
Aditi.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
Aditi. So, guys, I was super excited when we announced that she was coming on the show because I just think she's the best at what she does. But after watching her the 3 preseason games, work the sidelines for the Browns, she's going to be a mega star in that role for CBS.
Yeah,
She's
no doubt.
automatically going to change the role of the sideline reporter.
You want to talk about doing your work? She told me, we were talking off the air the other day, and she told me she's going to be like shadowing, I think she did it this weekend, if I remember correctly, Evan Washburn, who is excellent sideline
Very
reporter,
good.
one of the best
Very
in the
good.
game. And I'm like, she's an experienced reporter, but she hasn't done a ton of sidelines.
Right, this is a
she
bit of a new
wanted
role for her.
Right, so she wanted to shadow someone who is
She picked a
really
good one.
good.
Yeah,
She
that's
picked a
right.
good
Good one to
and he's
follow.
also a better choice than who's the number 1 CBS sideline reporter? I can't think of her name. Michelle Tafoya, right?
Not anymore.
No,
she
who's
was
the
with
number-
NBC.
Oh,
She's
yeah, right,
retired now.
Right.
It's Tracy Wolfson.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Tracy Wolfson.
Tracy Wolfson.
Tracy Wolfson.
She said, and she's friends with Tracy Wolfson, but she said Tracy Wolfson's part of the first team. So the sideline reporter has a different type of access and has to do different things.
Right.
Whereas Evan Washburn's on the second team, so he has to do more stuff on his own
Sure.
to get the information.
Right.
So she felt like it was better to shadow him.
Evan's
because
one of the few
her
male
experience.
sideline reporters left in the
He's
business.
fantastic.
He's really good at what he does. I'm
really
glad
good.
that they
He used
keep
to
him in
come on
that
our
role.
radio show a lot.
Yeah.
Whenever he'd be covering the Browns.
Knowledgeable, great presentation,
Yes.
gets good information.
Yes.
And what she'll learn, she already has, but
Yeah.
in that role, you have to boil it down to 2 sentences.
Right.
That's what they need from you, because obviously the pace of the game, you've
Right.
got 2 seconds here to interject. If it's a really good nugget, they'll let you talk over a play. It
Right.
better be great.
Right.
It rarely happens. But I think Evan is as good as anybody. I think Erin Andrews is very good at this too.
Sure.
She's been doing it for 20 years. But I think Evan's good at giving you the pertinent information you need in a very concise manner, economy of words, in and out, but you feel like you learned something when he's done.
Right, no
Every
doubt.
one of his hits.
Absolutely.
She's going to be great.
And has a little personality, and obviously she's got a big personality.
Are we going to do final takes or not?
We're going to do final takes. We're going to hold off on top 5 and good bet, bad bet. We're going to pass
Okay.
those for
Did I
tomorrow.
dominate again? I think I went 2-1, right?
You
I
did
was
go
horrible.
2-1.
I think I was
We
0-3.
do want to remind people, though, that on Friday, we have our full Ohio State preview show, not just for the season, but especially for the Notre Dame game. Top 5 matchup. We're going live afterwards. It'll be G. Bush, myself, and Tyvis about 11:30 Saturday night on Restream, breaking it down just like we'll do for the Browns games. We got Maurice Clarett, Robert Smith, Tyvis Powell, Paul Keels. Everything you need to know about this top 5 matchup on Saturday, we will go over on Friday, so don't miss out on that.
The only thing missing, I think, is we should bring Leroy on for 5 minutes just so we can all pick on him.
There's no such thing as a 5-minute interview. with
Yeah,
Leroy.
yeah. Well played.
You don't even get a question in.
No, that's like
five
one
minutes.
pause.
I mean, my gosh.
It's one pause.
All right, guys.
So we do have time for final takes. Bull, start us off.
Yeah, okay. So we all know there's a lot of hypocrites in the NFL, and there's plenty of examples all the time. And it goes to what I've talked about with the whole Deshaun Watson situation time and time again. We all have to decide where we draw the line. If you're off the Browns with Deshaun Watson, I'd say, well, why weren't you off with Kareem Hunt? And I can say the same thing about every team. Who are you going to root for now? You're going to pick a team? Everybody has decided this week that the Bills are the good franchise because they cut their punter. And because the Bills said, oh, this thing's more important than football, which of course there are things more important than football. It's sad that we treat athletes and coaches as if they're gods. It's really pathetic that we do that, but we do. And there are things more important than football. But that's not why the Bills cut their punter. They cut him because he's a punter, and he's a rookie, and he's not that important to their team.
Right.
If the same exact thing and the same exact accusations had come out against Josh Allen, there is a 0% chance the Bills would have cut him. They would have said, we got to wait for more details. We want to let the court do its thing. So the Bills are not some model franchise. If they were, they would have cut the guy when they first heard about this, which was over a month ago. And 2 days before they got rid of him, or a few days before they got rid of him, they cut the other punter on the roster who was pretty good and immediately got picked up. So if they were even considering cutting him, which they weren't, they wouldn't have cut the other punter. So don't put the Bills on a pedestal like they're some model franchise. If the Browns punter had the same accusations as Deshaun Watson, they would have cut him too, just like the Bills did. So they're all a bunch of hypocrites. Same thing on the Aaron Donald thing. Myles Garrett, Booger McFarland, who I think stinks on TV. It's inappropriate to say that, but I'm going to say it anyway. He said Myles Garrett should be arrested when he hit the Great Gazoo in the head with his helmet. But Aaron Donald, nothing should happen because it's in practice? That's stupid. Give me a break, hypocrites.
Mine's real quick, you guys. I want to talk about that Baker quote again. We've been through it, obviously, a lot. The alleged Baker quote. If we can get it up on screen at some point, that'd be great. Now, we've already proven we're not exactly sure that this is what he said. We think that it might be slightly out of context, and he hasn't really responded to it yet. Maybe it won't fire up the team, but I'm willing to take that chance, and that's why I'd like to start a GoFundMe that we're going to start right now to get a billboard. We're going to make a billboard, put that on it, and we're going to put it right across the street from Myles Garrett's house where he lives. Whoever that guy is that lives across the street from Myles Garrett, we're going to be putting a billboard in your front yard with him making that quote, and hopefully, so that Myles Garrett has to get up, walk through his weird little graveyard thing of quarterbacks from the past, and see that staring at him right up until the game. Do it as a service to your community. Donate money. If maybe PCC Airfoils wants to buy it, that's great too. Anyways, I want to put up that billboard. So if you're a billboard person or just have any follow through on plans whatsoever, I would like to hear from you because I'd like to get that going. I don't care if it doesn't have any effect whatsoever. If nothing else, it would make me laugh.
I'll take that.
Think he still has those graveyards?
I don't know.
It's a Halloween thing.
Yeah.
Just for Halloween.
My neighbors all have their Halloween crap up already.
Christmas lights still ready to
And
go.
Mike has a graveyard in his backyard. He doesn't want to talk about that right now.
No, totally different.
Down
No, it's not ornamental.
You know, I talk all the time, and I say, I'm not part of the media. The reason I say I'm not part of the media, we all know that I am part of the media, and it just is what it is. After you spend a lot of time doing media, and you do shows, and you do this show and radio shows, you sound dumb if you say I'm not part of the media. What I try to say is, I don't espouse to certain things in the media. Sometimes, we get quotes from the young lady like Cynthia, and she comes out and says something, and I feel like it's harmless. I feel like it's like, okay, that's part of the football, it's part of the game, but there's this gray line and there's this really blurry, fuzzy place where people can say things and not say things. I can tell you right now, if you go back, and this was a shock to me as much as a lot of people if you hear this, if you go back to the 3 or 4 most popular players that were on the Cleveland Browns, I consistently or have been reached out to by their camps multiple times. I talk to them all the time. And one of the camps is not Baker Mayfield, so you could do the math of who they are. Now, my point being is this. I never say anything about what we talk about because at the end of the day, it does me no good. I'm an opinion guy. At the end of the day, I give opinions about what happens. I'm not a journalist. So it does me no favors to come out and give one side of somebody's story when there's another side of a story. At the end of the day, I treat it like the streets. Sometimes when you see things, you got to keep walking. Sometimes when you hear things, you got to decide whether the game is to be sold or to be told. And at the end of the day, we really don't be dry snitching. Sometimes somebody can reach out to me and they can tell me all kind of great information. That's for me to tell fellow colleagues over a drink, right? Mm-hmm. And if they say something, I'm denying the hell out of it. I'm gonna let you know that right now. So everything they tell me, I always consider it like this. It's off the record because for me, I stand on what I believe in. Because one day I might have to come up and be like, you're terrible today. 2 days later, I might have to come up and be like, you know what, you play trash. And at the end of the day, the stuff you're telling me can't sway my opinion on keeping it real. And that's what my brand is, keeping it 100 at all times. And sometimes if you get too close to people, you ain't got that same leeway.
That's true.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yep. There's a role of the commentator and role of the reporter, and they are distinctly different. And the role that we serve here, we're not reporters. We're not churning stories. We're not going into locker rooms and covering beats. We're giving our opinion, and sometimes that opinion is formulated on things that people tell us, but we don't necessarily have to say who it was and exactly what they said. But it can help formulate our opinion.
Don't be dry snitching.
I got to be quick
Don't be dry snitching.
About 10 years ago, my daughter was getting ready to graduate from college, and she was getting ready to enter the media space. She'd done an internship at Good Morning America in New York City, and we had a conversation. Dad, they've offered me a job. What do you think? And I had a real frank conversation with her about how tough it is for a woman in this space. And she learned how tough it can be for a woman in this space. She was a bright young lady, and she was George Stephanopoulos' producer for a period of about 8 or 9 years before she moved back to Cleveland because her husband got a job in media here in Cleveland. She's now here. But I remember this conversation distinctly because I told her, honey, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult. You're going to have people throw roadblocks in your face. People are going to automatically think you can't do it because you are a woman. It's your job to prove them wrong. I don't know that I've ever been on a show where I've been more proud to have been a part of than today's. And here's why. We talk about football, a space that's been dominated by men for its entire existence. We had 3 reporters on the air today. They were all women. Not only were they all women, they were all fantastic. Cynthia Freeland of the NFL Network, she's one of the best of her craft. She had the courage to come on here and talk about something that she did that has caused quite a stir in the Carolina Panthers clubhouse and probably cost her relationship with Baker Mayfield, I don't know. Then we had Mary Kay Cabot on, who people want to throw darts at Mary Kay all the time. Mary Kay is unbelievably good at what she does. She is a professional. If she reports it, it's usually true. And there are things that she has to decide every day that she's going to put in her stories and what she's not. She knows a lot more than she ever tells us about that she doesn't put in for a variety of reasons. Maybe she can't corroborate it. Maybe she just doesn't think it's true. And then we had Aditi, who we all know what we think about Aditi. These are 3 women who have risen to the tops of their profession, and they've done it because they're smart, they work hard, and they never let their gender get in their way. And I'm pretty proud of that today, guys. I think we all should be. We brought 3 experts on today, and they were all women, and they were all fantastic, and I'd bring them on every day if we could. We're out of time. Back tomorrow, 22-hour break. We're getting there, guys. We're about 12 days away from real football.
Yeah,
something like that.
Precipice.
We are 9 days away from the first real football game.
Tyvis Powell.
Next Thursday.
Yeah.
No,
Jay, real quick, 4
September's
seconds.
coming.
We have to go.
September's
Play it,
coming.
Steve.
This is it, guys.
Oh.
This is the Carl Lewis video.
Yep.
Is that not one of the most disturbing things you've ever seen?
That is a very specific fetish.
Thank you for ruining my afternoon.
Very specific fetish.
Go do yourself a favor, Bull, and YouTube the whole video. The end of it, they go in the sauna and they turn the sign like "Do not disturb."
I don't want to see it.
We gotta go. We got on that note. We outie.
We're out of time.
See ya.
See you tomorrow.
Bye, guys.